Chapter 2283. The owner of the dungeon had left, and he had even taken Kelly with him. Mr. Allen only asked Yulia and Madanzo to wait in the resting room. "You should be back soon." Wait? It was impossible to wait. This wasn't their personality. Soon, the two followed behind the owner of the dungeon, with 3 black-armored warriors accompanying them. Yulia and Madanzo didn't get too close. "It shouldn't be a normal vampire," Madanzo suddenly said. "Even the lowest vampire is very sensitive to the smell of humans." As a traitor in the heavenly state, Yulia knew that 11 had absolute authority in the vampire race. Therefore, she didn't intend to just listen to him. "What do you mean?" Madanzo thought for a moment and said, "Maybe it's just a half-finished product. It has some of the characteristics of vampires, but it doesn't have the ability to live forever. It's even possible that it's just a ghoul, but it still has some thinking ability." "Seems like we've reached our destination," Yulia said softly. At this moment, the owner of the dungeon had walked into a wide door. "Lord Northstar, we meet again. Haha, isn't this my good friend, Mr. Allen?" In a luxurious room, Earl Rose, his trusted aide, Northstar, greeted the owner of the dungeon, Mr. Allen. "You wouldn't have come to find me for no reason. Tell me, what's the matter?" Northstar smiled as he sized up the owner of the dungeon. Finally, his gaze landed on K. E. Lilly, who was behind Mr. Allen. "Is this also a child participating in the selection?" Mr. Allen smiled and shook his head. "No, this is a gift specially brought for you, Lord Northstar." Northstar's eyes lit up, and the smile on his face became even brighter. The person in front of him was the biggest slave merchant in God Bless City. Because of the rules set by Earl Rose, God Bless City was able to maintain a fragile stability even though it was in ruins. There were many things that Northstar couldn't do directly, but he could use other methods. For example, the slave merchant in front of him was other methods. Also, this wasn't the first time he worked with the owner of the dungeon. "Alan, my old friend, what do you want?" "I've brought 2 other children with me this time," Liao said. The owner of the dungeon smiled. "If possible, I hope their names can appear in the final list." Northstar wasn't surprised. He smiled casually. "You haven't given up yet? It's obvious that the Earl doesn't want to see you." The owner of the dungeon said, "Northstar, my body's body. I can give you the same thing," Northstar said calmly. "It's a pity that you're too ambitious. Old friend, you're wearing down my patience." "You can save me," the owner of the dungeon said calmly. "But then, my identity won't be exposed. Vampires have their own rules. Without the owner's permission, giving a gift to a human, I don't think you can bear the consequences." Northstar looked calm. The owner of the dungeon said, "You still need me to do something that will allow you to control God-blessed city openly." "I can train another one," Northstar said calmly. "It won't take too long. No one can do it better than me." The owner of the dungeon chuckled. "I made the rules, and now everyone is following them. You can't break them, because once you do, God Bless City will be in chaos. At that time, the Earl who stays in the library won't be able to ignore it, right?" Nasta narrowed his eyes and said, "Alan, haven't you thought about the fact that I haven't mentioned your name in front of the Count even once? Maybe he doesn't even know about your existence. In this castle, as long as I want, even a fly can't enter the library. I hope you know," the owner of the dungeon said calmly. The owner of the dungeon said calmly, "As long as I want to, there will be an unprecedented riot in the city of God Blessing." The Earl made many rules, and he probably thought that those rules were being followed well. I wonder what he'll think if he knows that these rules have been broken. Northstar leaned back and said calmly, "You can't walk out of the castle." "I don't need to walk out of here," the owner of the dungeon said calmly. "Every time I come here, I'm thinking that I can't leave." "Lord Northstar, you don't really think that I'll come here without any preparation, do you?" The atmosphere was a bit tense. Northstar suddenly chuckled. "I'm very satisfied with the gift you sent this time. Of course, the other 2 contestants will be on the final list. Kay or Lily, from now on, Lord Northstar is your master." The owner of the dungeon nodded. He left, not even sparing a glance at the well-dressed girl beside him. "My lord, this Alan is too fearless," A black-armored warrior quickly whispered into Norsta's ear. Do we need him? What are you talking about? Northstar chuckled. Without him, where can I find such a good tool? Those thugs outside don't have as much experience as him. You don't really think that this guy only does business in God Bless City, right? But he's an ambitious guy. Northstar waved his hand. Norsta waved his hand and said, but in the end, he's just a human. Replacing me is just wishful thinking. I've said that I can let whoever I want to see the count in the castle. If I don't let anyone see him, no one can see him. If he wants to mess around, let him do it. As long as I don't give him a chance, he can only wag his tail and beg me like a dog. Don't you think it's interesting? The black-armored warrior couldn't help but sneer. Northstar said, but Alan is indeed a mad dog. If he's pushed too hard, he'll bite. Humph! When he can't take it anymore, I'll make him crawl over to me and beg me. To get the Count's favor, he has to be a middle-rank vampire. I spent more than 10 years to get to where I am today. At most, he's only worthy to be my servant. The black-armored warrior nodded. Then he glanced at Kay, or Lily, who was standing like a doll. Greed flashed across his eyes. Lord, this gift. Send it to my room. Northstar waved his hand and squinted his eyes in appreciation. When the selection is over, who's outside? Northstar's gaze suddenly froze. He looked out of the window and grabbed a chair, throwing it out. The huge force not only shattered the chair, but also the window frame. The black-armored warriors in the room rushed out, but didn't find anyone. A black-armored warrior crouched on the ground and sniffed. Someone was here. There are 2 different smells. Northstar frowned and thought of something. There's a report saying that a forged invitation was found. Someone sneaked in. A black-armored warrior was the first to react. It's a rat. Northstar sneered. Send my order. Gather everyone. It's starting. Also, block all the roads to the inner castle. Even a fly won't be able to get in. Yes, deep in the palace and the library. A man with disheveled hair slowly opened his eyes. He looked at the crystal cup in front of him absent-mindedly. There was still a trace of red at the edge of the cup. The man rubbed his head, grabbed a bell on the desk, and shook it. After a while, a beautiful maid pushed the door open and entered. Master, what can I do for you? I think I heard something outside. Did something happen? The man asked casually. The maid said unhurriedly, maybe it's from the death arena. Death arena? The man frowned. It's starting so soon? Master, it's been a month, the maid said with her head lowered. Another month, huh? The man shook his head. Time flies. The maid said, Master, Lord Northstar asked me to ask you if you want to go to the arena to watch. Lord Northstar said you haven't appeared for a long time. If possible, it's better for you to appear. After all, you are the ruler of the city of God. The man waved his hand and said, There's nothing to see. I won't go. Come here and help me see if there are any books that I haven't read yet. Yes, master. Could it be him? In a corner of the palace, Yulia and Madanzo were squatting in a dark room. Who is it? Madanzo put her ear on the door and asked. They had just escaped from the room where Rose Earl, his henchman, was meeting with the dungeon master. Outside, a large group of black-armored warriors was searching for them. That Rose Earl, as trusted aide, was probably not something a group of black-armored warriors could compare to. He was a real vampire, and his 5 senses were abnormally sharp. Northstar, Yulia said in a low voice. Northstar? Did you say Rose Earl? S. henchman? Madanzo couldn't help but frown. Yulia suddenly asked, Senior, didn't you say you know a lot about the Holy Light Kingdom? Then let me ask you, do you know if there's a person called Northstar in the Holy Light Kingdom, in the Free Cities? Madanzo thought for a while and said, There is such a person, and his background is not small. Northstar is the same as Calvin. He is also one of the grand scholars in the Free Cities. He is also the leader of a faction called the Purcell School. He is different from Calvin, who is an ascetic. He is very good at socializing. How should I say it? The purpose of this school is to share with others. Yulia thought for a while and said, I also know a guy called Northstar. I don't know if he's a grand scholar, but he is secretly the manager of an underground casino in the Free Cities. Moreover, as far as I know, This underground casino provides special services for the free cities and even the other 7 major figures. This even involves some of the Holy Maiden candidates who have lost their footing. What did you hear this? Madanzo couldn't help but frown. What kind of person was it? Strictly speaking, it was a specter that hid in the Holy Light Nation's destiny system. It could collect a lot of information about the Holy Light Nation. As long as there was a destiny system, it could logically be said that there were no secrets to it. However, it didn't know about the existence of this casino that Yulia was talking about. Could it be that the person with authority in the destiny system had secretly blocked it? Or, how do you know this? Yulia subconsciously said, because I went to this casino before. Madanzo blinked and tactically leaned back. Yulia rolled her eyes in annoyance. What are you thinking? Those so-called major figures of the Holy Light Kingdom want me to go to the casino? It's 1,000 years too early to dream. Madanzo canceled her tactic and leaned back. At the same time, she frowned. What else do you know? Yulia said, as far as I know, although this Norsta is the manager of this underground casino, he seems to have a mastermind behind the scenes. However, I don't know who the mastermind is yet. She had fought her way through the underground casino, but she didn't expect that Norsta had already gone to the venue of the Holy Maiden ceremony as a judge. She had no choice but to pretend to be Norsta and contact the mastermind. Unexpectedly, the mastermind was very decisive. After knowing that the casino was exposed, he directly remotely blew up the entire place. However, Norsta managed to escape because of this. So this Rose Earl, as trusted aide, is the Grand Scholar of the Free Cities, Norsta? Yulia narrowed her eyes. We're the Grand Scholars of the Free Cities. Do they always do bad things? Madanzo shrugged and didn't say anything. Yulia opened the door a little and peeked outside. After thinking for a while, she said, "There's no one outside. We can't stay out for too long. Our lives are still in Alan's hands." Inner castle, go in. A black-armored warrior brought K. Forehead Lily into a luxurious room. This was the personal room of the Earl as trusted aide, Mr. Norsta. In terms of luxury, it was even more luxurious than the Earl's room. However, the Earl almost never went back to his room. Wait here. When the selection is over, Mr. Norsta will come back to see you, the black-armored warrior said calmly. His task was very simple. He just had to watch over this beautiful girl until Mr. Norsta arrived. Please wait. In the room, the beautiful girl suddenly said softly, "What else do you want?" The black-armored warrior was impatient. To him, the girl in front of him was constantly emitting a fatal temptation. She was far more beautiful than those vulgar blood servants. However, this girl belonged to Mr. Norsta. They couldn't touch her. Only when Mr. Norsta got tired of her would he reward her. At that time, this girl probably wouldn't be as perfect as she was now. However, she would still be much better than those vulgar blood servants. Perhaps he would be able to taste her soon. Thinking of this, the black-armored warrior's throat became dry. His blood-sucking fangs could be seen. "Do you think I'm beautiful?" The girl spoke softly. Her hands were on her collar, and she slowly unbuttoned a button. The snow-white collar was revealed, and the black-armored warrior's pupils suddenly shrank a little. The girl had already wrapped her arms around the black-armored warrior's neck. Her body was pressed against that cold armor. She even bit her lips so hard that they bled, staining them with a touch of dark red. The black-armored warrior's eyes suddenly became excited. His lips trembled. His blood-sucking fangs were completely exposed. His instincts instantly overwhelmed his rationality. At this moment, a sharp pain came from the back of his neck and instantly spread throughout his entire body. The black-armored warrior fell to the ground in an instant. He twitched nonstop. In the end, his entire body turned into a pool of pus. Kalili expressionlessly looked at the liquid on the ground. Between her fingers, there was a steel needle that was emitting a clear light. She slowly exhaled and directly tore open the long skirt on her body. Inside, he was wearing a tight-fitting leather jacket and a chapter. Chapter 2284. In order to sneak in, one had to wear a tight, black leather jacket that could be zipped all the way to the end. This was the order of the owner of the dungeon. The steel needle was dipped in a special poison, which was obviously fatal to vampires. Moreover, the steel needle was also provided by the owner of the dungeon, Alan. He only had one request for Kay or Lily, and that was to help him take something out of the library in the inner castle. This was almost an order written into Kay or Lily's brain. The method of implanting the order was a secret technique that once belonged to the God Bless the Church. It was a technique called mind rewriting. As for how the owner of the dungeon mastered this technique and how he used it, Kay or Lily did not know. At this moment, she was like a deadly machine that could only carry out tasks accurately. Operation Codename, Deadly Black Orchid, activate. Where did you go? When Yulia and Madanzo returned to the resting room, they found that the owner of the dungeon, Mr. Allen, had returned by himself. Kay or Lily was there. The two of them knew, but at this moment, they asked in surprise, "Where is Kay or Lily?" "Answer my question first," Mr. Allen said calmly. "I'm going to the washroom." She went to touch up her makeup. Yulia pointed at Madanzo and said casually. Then, she realized that something was wrong. "I'm going to touch up my makeup." She went to the washroom. "Is that so?" The owner of the dungeon nodded. "Something happened in the castle. Be careful not to move around. If you get lost here, even I can't save you." Yulia couldn't help but blink. She was so lame, and her answer was obviously insincere, but the owner of the dungeon didn't respond. "When will the selection begin?" Madanzo suddenly asked. Mr. Allen smiled casually and said, "It has been arranged. Your names are on the final list. You just need to wait here." "So what about Kay or Lily?" Yulia continued to ask. "There's a price to pay for everything." The owner of the dungeon said indifferently, "She is not as outstanding as you all, but she can use her remaining heat to illuminate your path forward. This guy is quite suitable to be a scammer." Yulia shrugged. Time slowly passed. They did not continue to communicate. Yulia felt that Mr. Allen seemed to be waiting for something. Obviously, it was not the time of the final selection, but something more important. She could feel that under the calm exterior of the dungeon's owner, there was a faint trace of uneasiness and nervousness. "It's time." Suddenly, the door to the resting room opened. A black-armored warrior stood in front of the door and said coldly, "Come with me." The search did not yield satisfactory results. However, Norsta didn't seem to be unhappy at all. Everything was still going according to plan. The initial selection was already over, and the young men and women who didn't make the cut were directly distributed to the black-armored warriors who performed outstandingly. There were only 10 names left on the final list. The person who received the list had already sent it to Norsta. "Which two are the candidates sent by Alan?" Norsta asked casually. "The first and second names on the list, Mr. Norsta." "Okay." Norsta picked up the list and glanced at it casually. Actually, he did not care who was really sent. Everything was just for show. However, when he saw the second name on the list, his expression changed slightly. "Yulia?" The slight change in Norsta's expression did not escape the observation of his subordinates. "Mr. Norsta, is there a problem?" Norsta shook his head. His expression was uncertain. At this moment, the door of the hall slowly opened. The candidates on the final list were led into the hall by their respective referees. 7 girls and 3 boys. The black-armored warriors in the hall did not hide the passion in their eyes. A grand banquet would be held here soon. Except for the winner, the rest would become delicious food in this hall. This was a chance to indulge themselves only once in a while. Bloodthirsty people like them had long been unable to endure their hunger. "Is it really her?" "How?" Through the hazy curtain, Norsta's gaze landed on one of the girls. He took a deep breath as if he had made a decision. Finally, the Count's trusted aide, Lord Norsta, suddenly waved his hand at his subordinates as if he was giving them some orders. The 10 boys and girls were all waiting silently in the hall at this moment. They were like objects on display. At this moment, the owner of the dungeon, Alan, was gathering with the bosses of other strongholds on the second floor of the hall. They were waiting for the final result. It was also a form of communication. Due to the situation in the City of God's protection, there were many conflicts between the different factions. A large-scale meeting between the leaders would only happen when the castle held a selection. The quality of the rewards this time is very high. It's hard to say who will win this time. No matter who it is, the rewards this time are much higher than before. The winner. Don't you want to share some of the rewards to reward everyone? That depends on Mr. Allen's intentions. After all, unless Mr. Allen doesn't come, it is always Mr. Allen's home field. Instantly, all the light from the door gathered on the owner of the dungeon. Recently, I have received a batch of slaves from the outer city. If you're interested, come to my dungeon and choose one. Generous, generous. Right at this moment, a black-armored warrior slowly arrived in front of the 10 boys and girls. The leaders and big shots on the spectator stand immediately focus their attention and calm down. Although they were praising the owner of the dungeon, Allen, on the surface, they all wanted to be the one who won the competition. The reward of the winner was enough for them to live a good life in their territory for 1 or 2 months. Number 2, Yulia stepped forward. The black-armored warrior said calmly, "Congratulations, you have passed the final selection and become the winner." The hall was silent. Except for Madanzo, the other 8 boys and girls all looked pale. They stood there in a daze. Some even collapsed on the ground. Some even cried. Those who were able to come here knew what would happen to the losers. Facing this situation, Yulia was confused. However, she vaguely grasped something in her heart. She subconsciously looked behind the veil. She didn't have any supernatural power, but her sixth sense was still there. Someone was watching her from the moment she entered the room. The only person she could think of was, as expected, it's Nasta. She had been using Yulia all this time. Yulia was a popular candidate for the Holy Maiden candidate of the Free Cities. Almost everyone knew about her. Not only that, Yulia was also a puppet behind the scenes of the underground casino in the Free Cities. The manager of the underground casino was the head of the Purcell School of the Free Cities, one of the great scholars, Nasta. The time in the page world was different. Some were fast, and some were slow. She didn't know how long Nasta had been here, but it obviously wasn't long enough for him to forget about Yulia. This isn't fair. At this moment, an angry roar came from the viewing platform. It directly interrupted Yulia's thoughts. It was a muscular man who had transformed his entire left arm into a mechanical arm. His palm was even a huge axe. "You have a problem?" The black-armored warrior who announced the result looked up in a daze. The muscular man's expression changed slightly. He clenched his teeth and said, "Why did you announce the result directly this time? I don't accept it. To be able to come here, that person didn't pay the price. But why did the person sent by Allen go up directly? Lord Nasta, isn't it a little unfair for you to do this? Don't tell me that I don't give you enough things." Brute. The leaders in the stands looked at the muscular man and immediately broke out in cold sweat. They thought to themselves, this guy is a brainless thing. This guy really is a brainless thing. His territory is basically all brash. In fact, this muscular man was really fierce. He was also someone who wasn't afraid of death. He directly took out an entire street of territory. "You don't accept it?" A voice came from behind the curtain. It was Nasta's voice. The muscular man roared and directly jumped down from the viewing platform. "Lord Nasta, everyone fought for their territory. Who didn't pay the price? If you think that Allen gave you enough benefits and directly chose the person he sent, then I can also give you the same thing." A red light as thick as a finger suddenly shot out from behind the curtain. The muscular man's reaction was extremely fast. The axe on his mechanical arm was also quickly placed in front of him, blocking the red light directly. However, the sharp metal axe was directly broken, and the muscular man was instantly sent flying by the red light, crashing directly into the wall. A trace of black appeared on the right side of his chest, and his eyes rolled back, but he still lost consciousness. There are still those who don't want to accept it. No more. Then that's all for today. The winner, come forward. Follow me. After saying a few words, Nasta directly turned and left. At the same time, 2 black-armored warriors came to the left and right of Yulia and took her away. At this time, Nasta had already left and the door of the hall was closed. However, there were still more than 10 black-armored warriors in the hall. The black-armored warriors took off their helmets and revealed their sharp fangs. They originally thought that they would have to wait for a while. They didn't expect that the selection would end so quickly. Then, what were they waiting for? A black-armored warrior directly pounced on a panic-stricken girl. He directly tore open the girl's clothes and bit down like a wild beast. "Save me!" The girl screamed in fear. It was like a signal. At this time, the young boys and girls who were inquiring about the situation started to flee in fear. However, all the entrances and exits of the hall were completely sealed. Struggling could only arouse the bloodlust in the hearts of the black-armored warriors. On the viewing platform, the group of leaders immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. There was an exit here. They didn't expect that this time, the exit hadn't been opened yet. At this time, they could only watch this frightening scene in fear. They were terrified and tried to hide by the exit. They were afraid that the black-armored warriors would point their spears at them when they weren't satisfied. However, at this time, an angry roar came from the hall below. "Mother Faster's I'll kill you bastards today." It turned out to be the muscular man who had been sent flying by the red light. He stood up again, but his chest was still charred black. Unexpectedly, there was a faint metallic luster in the muscles under his chest. There was a steel plate buried in his chest. The axe on the metal arm had been broken. At this time, the muscular man directly twisted his wrist, revealing the black muzzle. Bang! Fire! In the hall, suddenly, there was an explosion. This fellow, on the viewing platform, the owner of the dungeon, stared in astonishment at the ferocious might of the muscular man in the hall. He couldn't help but gape. He slowly exhaled and suddenly looked towards the group of cowardly fellows at the entrance. He quickly asked, "This person who brought him here, how do I know? Isn't it your man, Lord Allen?" The owner of the dungeon shook his head. The leaders of the strongholds in front of the door were stunned. The owner of the dungeon said with a serious look, "The invitation of the unlucky guy before. It's him?" Everyone looked at the muscular man who was crazily firing at the vampire in the hall. As if thinking of something, their faces changed, and they said, "No, he messed up our arrangement." The owner of the dungeon let out a sigh of relief. He twisted the scepter in his hand and pulled out a thin sword made of pure silver. "Then I'll stop pretending. Let's lay our cards on the table. The city of God has been ruled by Norsta for too long. It's time for a new owner." The leaders gritted their teeth and looked determined. "We'll do as you say. Who's there? You're not allowed here." In front of the library, a beautiful maid yelled. At this moment, a black shadow flew over, and then the maid's eyes turned black, and she instantly fell to the ground. After the girl in black skin-tight leather silently put down the maid, she looked at the door of the library. Some of her skills were acquired in the past 10 days of training, but most of them were acquired from the pilot training in the last page world. It had almost become her instinct. She was indeed only left with instinct. The only thought in her mind was to complete the order. Crack! The door to the library gently opened, and the young girl slowly extended a leg through the door. Then, her body pressed against the door, and she turned around and entered almost without making the slightest sound. "Didn't I tell you not to disturb me? It's not time to eat yet. I'm not hungry." A slightly irritated voice came from a row of bookshelves. There was also the sound of footsteps coming out. The girl lowered her body and bent her body. Then, she rushed to the source of the footsteps. Between her fingers, she was still holding a steel needle that was glowing with green light. A man with disheveled hair suddenly appeared in front of the girl. "Kate or Lily?" The girl didn't say anything and stabbed the steel needle in her hand toward the man with disheveled hair. However, the man didn't move at all as if he was struck by lightning. He just let the steel needle pierce his chest. Instantly, the man with disheveled hair disappeared. The girl's attack missed. When she realized what happened, the man with disheveled hair had already appeared behind her and grabbed the girl's hand that was holding the steel needle. "Stop fooling around. I'll deduct your salary." End of chapter. Chapter 2285. The girl was dazed for a moment. In just an instant, she had more than one steel needle hidden in her hand that could deal a fatal blow to a vampire. She suddenly opened her mouth, and a thinner poison needle shot out from the bottom of her tongue. It was a strange and unexpected attack. However, the owner of this library had extraordinary reflexes. Although he looked dispirited, due to his race's special physique, his ability was improving day by day, even if he did not deliberately train. Facing the incoming danger, he suddenly opened his mouth and bit the poison needle that shot out from the girl's mouth. The girl was obviously not out of the human category. Her strength was innately not comparable to the man with disheveled hair. Her hands were tied behind her back. The man's eyes were covered with strange blood vessels. Instantly, the man's face changed slightly. As the girl continued to struggle, his hand quickly pulled out something from the back of her head, a thin steel needle hidden behind her hair. Not just one. At this time, under the horrifying observation of the man, there were a total of 5 thin steel needles in the back of the girl's head. Mind rewriting? It's actually this kind of technology? The man's brows were covered with a forbidden spell. While thinking, he quickly pulled out the steel needles from the back of the girl's head one by one. However, there was only one steel needle left. Instantly, the girl collapsed on the ground. The last steel needle could not be pulled out directly, or else it would severely damage the subject's brain. This was originally a technique used by the God Bless Church in the past for interrogation. In the beginning, it was indeed used in interrogation work. However, it gradually evolved into a common method used to train spies or men of sacrifice. In this library, there were most of the research materials of the God Bless Church. Among them, there were no documents related to mind rewriting. He had been hiding in this library for more than 10 years. So he knew the knowledge of this place like the back of his hand. After the church was destroyed, I almost controlled the flow of all knowledge, except for the blueprints of some facilities and weapon production lines that were plundered during the Battle of Annihilation, which could not be retrieved because it was too chaotic. Did the mind rewriting technology also flow out at that time? The man looked at the girl who collapsed on the ground and frowned deeper. However, he quickly shook his head. Before the true curse of the vampires destroyed the God-blessed city, it had been 500 years since the vampires started to decline due to the war. The human nobles led by the God-blessed city had developed for 500 years, and they had developed and spread a lot of technology. Even though the vampires had revived 15 years ago and chased the last batch of humans to the last pure land in the sky, Laputa, the vampires had consciously started to eliminate all kinds of technology that humans had developed in the past 500 years. However, there were actually quite a number of vampires who were secretly hiding the technology of the God Bless the Holy See. Some of them wanted to study it, some of them simply wanted to collect it. There was also a portion of them who felt that it was convenient to use it. Where's this place? The girl slowly woke up from her coma. When she raised her head and saw the face of the man in front of her, the girl's lips couldn't help but twitch a few times, and tears silently fell from her eyes. Her throat gurgled as if there was something stuck in her throat. At this moment, the girl was like a person who had lost her voice. Her hands suddenly grabbed the man's arms. "It's me. It's really me. You're not dreaming." The man said softly, "You still have a steel needle that I can't pull out for now. It might affect the language in your brain, but it won't affect your ability to understand. So, Kate or Lily, can you calm down? Now." The girl, Kate or Lily, quickly wiped her eyes, and after a few deep breaths, she slowly nodded. "First, I want to know how long you have been here, and how did you come to this castle?" The man asked patiently. He was too patient. However, this wasn't his nature. It was a passive habit that he had developed after trapping himself in the library for more than 10 years. After a few attempts, Kate or Lily slowly spat out a few words. "A month ago, Alan. Selection. You came here more than a month ago?" The man frowned. "A person called Alan brought you here?" Kate or Lily silently nodded. "What is a selection?" The man asked in confusion. "Meet you." Kate or Lily pointed at the man. "Who is Alan?" The man lowered his head and muttered to himself for a moment. "He used mind rewriting on you and sent you to kill me." Kate or Lily shook her head, indicating that she didn't know. Due to the steel needle still stuck in her, most of her memories were in a mess. It wasn't a loss of memories, but a mess. She couldn't connect the dots, let alone describe it with words. Minder writing had a very serious side effect on the recipient's brain. Generally speaking, those who used this skill would have a password. This password was used to open the recipient's switch. Without a doubt, if he wanted to solve the problem with Kay or Lily, he had to find the person who used the skill, Alan. After thinking about it, the man picked up the bell on the table and shook it. However, after a while, the door to the library didn't open. Kay or Lily acted like a child who had done something wrong. You killed the girl outside? The man frowned. Kay or Lily quickly shook her head. I fainted. Vampire, kill, not live. It seems that the person who controlled you hates vampires. The man smiled bitterly. Is he the leader of a street in the city of God blessing? Kay or Lily thought for a moment and said, the dungeon. The man shook his head. I haven't walked out of this room for a long time. As for the external changes, it's true that I haven't walked out of this room for a long time. Problem? Kay or Lily anxiously grabbed the man's sleeve. The man smiled bitterly. This library has a special power that can suppress my bloodlust. I have some means of my own as well. Under the double effect and the constant reading to divert my attention, I didn't lose myself. Kay or Lily, maybe you don't know this, but vampires can go for more than 10 years without sleep. Kay or Lily's grip on the man's sleeve tightened. Behind the man's disheveled hair was a pair of sunken eyes, as if he had failed to put on smoky makeup. His eye sockets were pitch black. He had not slept for more than 10 years. I'm afraid that once I fall asleep, I won't be the same person when I wake up. He slowly sighed and immediately carried the girl up. The girl instinctively gasped. She had never been treated like this by a man. Seeing the man carrying her and walking out of the library, Kay or Lily quickly shook her head. You? It's not like I can't come back. The man chuckled. I'm just used to not going out. It's not like I can't go out. Besides, it's just going out for a while. It's not that bad. Staying at home was addictive. The library was like an absolute safe zone for him. I used to go out once in a while, but I gradually became too lazy to go out. The man smiled bitterly. I'm almost a useless person. Outside the library, the maid outside was indeed unconscious on the ground. Except for the maid, there was no one else in the corridor. He liked a quiet environment, so he didn't leave anyone except for one or two maids. The man carried Kay or Lily and walked for a long time before he saw people. 4 black-armored warriors guarding at the end of the corridor. Who is it? The black-armored warriors reacted quickly and drew their weapons. It's the Earl. The moment the weapon was drawn, the few black-armored warriors sucked in a breath of cold air. The man in front of her had messy hair, was wearing a wrinkled white shirt and pants, and was even barefoot. However, this was the real owner of the City of God's Protection, Rose Earl, Arthaces, a noble of the vampires. Their master. Moss Master, when did you come out? Now. The man. Essex tilted his head and looked at the black-armored warriors who were kneeling on the ground. You seem to be afraid that I'll come out? No, of course not. We're just... The black-armored warriors quickly said, we're too excited. Because we haven't seen Master for a long time. That's why we're so excited. You're making me feel embarrassed again. Arthaces chuckled. Moss Master, may I ask, does Lord Nasta know that you've come out? One of the black-armored warriors lowered his head and asked quickly. I didn't tell him. Essex said casually, but I need to talk to him about something. Where's Nasta now? Oh, the maid told me that this month's death arena has started. Nasta should be at the arena now. Come with me. The 4 black-armored warriors who were kneeling on the ground didn't get up. Not only that, their bodies even started to tremble slightly. Can't you hear what I said? Arthaces couldn't help but frown. What's wrong? Are my words no longer useful now? Or do you want to tell me that the King era has changed again? A red light slowly crawled up Asash's eyes. The bloodline suppression from a vampire noble made the black-armored warriors feel like they were suffocating. The aura of the Rose Earl in front of them instantly crushed their mental defenses. Moss Master, please spare us. Spare us. Lord Nasta ordered us to do this. He forced us to do this. You can all leave now. This was another room. It was still as luxurious as before. Only Nasta and Yulia were left in the room. Nasta was standing in front of a huge floor-to-ceiling window with his back facing them. Outside the window was the quiet, heavenly blessing city. They could only vaguely see some faint lights that were like fireflies. It was not too much, not too little, but it was enough to show the number of forces on the streets of heavenly blessing city. Yulia? Nasta finally said slowly. He turned around and sized up Yulia with his eagle-like eyes. Yes, Lord. At this time, senior sister, Yulia, lowered her head, and her body trembled slightly. Her voice also sounded very weak and scared. Raise your head and look at me, Nasta said indifferently. Take a good look at my face. See, do you remember who I am? Nord said indifferently. Yulia slowly raised her head and looked at Nasta blankly. She said hesitantly, I heard from Lord Alan that you're the Earl's confidant. You're the great Lord Nasta. Nasta suddenly took a few steps forward. He was now only an arm's length away from Yulia. Look carefully. Do you really not recognize me? My lord, Senior sister, Yulia gripped the hem of her skirt tightly with both hands. Her neck shrunk, and her face was pale. How should I answer to be considered correct? Just similar. Nasta frowned suspiciously. Then, he shook his head and muttered to himself, It doesn't matter if it's true or not. Soon, you'll have no choice but to obey me unconditionally. After saying that, Nasta grabbed Yulia's arm and opened her head with his other hand, revealing the snow-white skin on her neck. His fangs were already exposed. Yulia's eyes narrowed. At this moment, the door of the room opened in a hurry. Lord Nasta, something happened. A black-armored warrior walked out in a panic. Alan from the dungeon started a riot and killed several guards. They have mithril weapons from the demon hunters. Watch this woman closely. Don't let her escape. Nasta snorted coldly and threw Yulia onto the sofa. Then, he walked out of the room with a cold expression. Just as he walked out of the room, Nasta turned around and said fiercely, No one is allowed to touch her. The black-armored warriors immediately fell silent. Senior sister, Yulia secretly heaved a sigh of relief. However, when she saw that there were at least 4 black-armored warriors guarding the room, she couldn't help but feel troubled. Right now, she couldn't take on 10 people at once, right? But if there were only 4 of them, don't move. What are you trying to do? Stand properly. Little brother, have you played an interactive game with 5 people before? Yulia blinked her eyes. Rip. She tore her skirt apart, revealing her thighs. You, senior, don't trick me. Hopefully, these black-armored warriors were not real vampires, as Madanzo had said. They were only half-finished products with some of the characteristics of vampires. Yula. A silver longsword pierced into the body of a black-armored warrior whose mouth was full of blood from the back. The moment the longsword pierced into the black-armored warrior's body, thick smoke billowed out from the wound. It felt like it was burning. With a painful cry, the black-armored warrior fell to the ground, on top of Madanzo's body. The little boy was indeed worthy of being able to sleep on the same bed as senior sister, Yulia, and play on the same stage as her. At this moment, he fully demonstrated what it meant to be weak and helpless. The black-armored warrior on top of her was kicked away, and the one who kicked the black-armored warrior was the owner of the dungeon, Alan. The situation has changed. The owner of the dungeon looked down at the little boy on the ground and suddenly chuckled, Survive for yourself. After saying that, the owner of the dungeon lifted his clothes and took out a dagger from his waist, throwing it directly at Madanzo. It's made of mithril. It's best to stab into the heart of these vampires. Who are you? Madanzo felt that the atmosphere was about to change about this question. At this moment, the owner of the dungeon raised his head and looked at the black-armored warriors breaking through the door of the hall. He turned around and casually waved the mithril longsword in his hand, chuckling, Vampire Hunter, D. At this moment, Madanzo couldn't help blinking her eyes. With letters? Could it be? Into this chapter. Chapter 2286. The dagger was made of mithril. Madanzo could recognize this special material at a glance, but this dagger did not possess any special power. Regardless of whether the craftsmanship was good or not, it easily pierced into the body of one of the black armored warriors on the ground. Although half of the vampires were afraid of silver weapons, it was not to this extent. It seemed that this page world had a special judgment of vampires. In the hall, other than it, the young boys and girls who were brought to participate in the selection had all died tragically under the hands of the black armored warriors. Similarly, many of the black armored warriors had also died under the bombardment of the muscular man. The rest were killed by a group of leaders led by the dungeon master Alan. These people all had mithril weapons that could cause fatal damage to the black armored warriors. However, no one knew exactly how many black armored warriors were kept in this castle. This group of people only had the bodies of ordinary people. Even if they were strong in martial arts and could rely on mithril weapons to deal with the black armored warriors, how could they deal with the number of black armored warriors? The physical quality of the black armored warriors was far superior to that of humans. "All of you, get out of the way!" Right at this moment, the muscular man suddenly shouted fiercely. Then, the muscular man clenched his teeth and suddenly broke the palm of his other hand. This arm was also made of machinery, but it was covered with bionic skin. A thick and long artillery shell instantly shot out from the muscular man's other mechanical arm. The dungeon master Alan, who claimed to be Vampire Hunter D, could not help but exclaim, "This is silver dust bullet." The artillery shell instantly blasted into the middle of the black armored warriors. At the same time, the dungeon master Alan exclaimed, and the group of street leaders hid themselves. After the dazzling flash, there were bursts of mournful wailing sounds. Countless fine mithril fragments instantly exploded into the bodies of the black armored warriors, especially their faces. In the enclosed environment of the hall, nearly 2/3 of the black armored warriors fell. The mithril fragments entered their bodies and crazily eroded their flesh. The remaining black armored warriors could not help but tremble in fear. At this moment, they did not dare to quickly close up because they were afraid that the muscular man would once again attack with silver dust bullets. Closing up the formation meant that they would die faster. Damn it! How could it be silver dust bullets? Haven't they all been destroyed? They looked in horror at this ruthless, muscle-bound man. This was simply a god of death. Are you scared? You bunch of animals. I am here with sincerity to discuss cooperation with you. You dare to play dirty tricks with me? I'll F***CK you all to death. The reason? There was no way to refute the reason. The dungeon owner, who called himself, couldn't help but smile bitterly. He didn't know where this brute came from. The only thing he could guess was that this guy must have used some sort of method to switch the invitation of the unlucky guy from before to sneak into the venue. However, this was also a good thing. With just this one silver dust bullet, the situation was instantly reversed, and the pressure on him was greatly reduced. At the same time, Kate or Lily didn't respond. Could it be that she failed? Under the iron mask, no one knew what expression the owner of the dungeon was wearing. Ha ha! Trash! Trash! You bunch of trash! At this time, the muscular man was laughing wildly. Using the shock of the silver dust bullets, he directly killed his way into the group of black armored warriors. This group of black armored warriors had a murderous look on their faces, but they had been comfortable in this glorious castle for too long and had long been accustomed to the obedience and reverence of humans. Now, the sudden threat of death made some of the black armored warriors lose their will to resist. They still had the strength to fight, but they were already scared before the fight even started. Some of them even ran out of the door. Just as a black armored warrior ran out of the door, a red light instantly pierced through his head. The red light didn't stop there. After piercing through the black armored warrior's head, it still shot into the wall, creating a fist-sized hole. Then, a small piece of the wall suddenly shattered. "Master! Master Norsta!" Exclamations sounded. At the same time, a black shadow entered the hall. In the blink of an eye, Norsta, who was dressed in standard ceremonial attire, was standing with his hands behind his back, looking around with narrowed eyes. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The strange ability that Norsta displayed was obviously not something that these black armored warriors could compare with. Unparalleled speed, strange black shadow, terrifying red light, and terrifying pressure that made people's hearts beat violently just by standing there. Is this the legendary horror of middle-level vampires? Norsta looked around, and finally his gaze fell on the muscle-bound man. The silver dust floating in the air automatically bounced off his body. Silver dust bullet? I didn't expect you to have this kind of thing. Norsta sneered. But this kind of weapon is only useful against low-level guys. But the guys working under me are getting more and more lazy. They actually let people in with weapons. The muscle-bound man was now facing a formidable enemy. He raised his mechanical arm, equipped with the silver dust bullet, and aimed it at the terrifying enemy in front of him. But the moment the muscle-bound man raised his arm, Norsta's figure flashed and directly grabbed the muscle-bound man's throat. This speed, he was instantly horrified. At this moment, bang, bang, bang. 3 strange sounds were heard. Norsta snorted coldly. His figure flashed, and his arms stretched out horizontally. 3 thumb-sized silver bullets stuck to his arm and spun wildly. Finally, the bullets lost their momentum and fell to the ground. Norsta narrowed his eyes and looked at the silver bullets on the ground. Then, he raised his head and looked in the direction where the bullets came from. There, the owner of the dungeon was holding a bronze-colored weapon that looked like a gun. The 3 consecutive shots didn't cause any damage to Norsta. The owner of the dungeon walked out again and aimed at Norsta. But Norsta just sneered. He couldn't help but look at the owner of the dungeon and the neighborhood leaders who were resisting. He clicked his tongue and said, "It seems that I've been too lax in paying attention to God-blessed city recently." "You're too arrogant," the owner of the dungeon said calmly. "That's because you don't understand my power." Norsta chuckled. Even the powerful God-blessed church was defeated. They can only curl up in a corner and struggle to survive. Do you think that you can defeat me with just these weapons that even the God-blessed church's warriors used? Naive. There's nothing to say now. Mr. Allen, let's fight. One of the street leaders bellowed. In his hand, he was also holding a gun that could fire silver bullets. Bullets poured out one after another. Norsta wasn't afraid at all. His body turned into a black shadow. The shadow split and turned into hundreds of bats that rushed toward the crowd. The owner of the dungeon focused his eyes. He reached behind him and pressed his hand on his waist bag. He seemed to have been prepared. However, at this moment, a soul-stirring roar suddenly sounded in the hall. A feeling that was far more terrifying than when Norsta appeared filled everyone's eyes. Someone was coming from the entrance of the hall. Under this roar, hundreds of bats fell down and returned to Norsta's original form. Norsta's face was pale. His fangs protruded out of his mouth. Facing the direction of the roar, Norsta was resisting something with all his might. He roared in a low voice, but his body was trembling slightly. He even hugged his head with both hands, showing extreme pain and confusion. In the end, Norsta couldn't do anything and knelt on the ground. Earl. At the exit of the passage, a barefooted man with messy hair slowly walked out. He had a pair of demonic red eyes. Behind the man, there was a young girl wearing a tight black leather jacket. Behind the young girl was a group of dejected black-armored warriors who looked pale as if they had been sentenced to death. At this moment, a few of the street leaders quietly gathered around the dungeon master and looked at this sudden situation in bewilderment. They had been oppressed for so long that they had gone crazy. Therefore, when the owner of the dungeon called for them, they didn't think much about it and agreed to this operation. However, when they were about to face the current owner of the City of God, Earl Rose, they weren't as excited as they were when they first answered the call. "Norsta, this doesn't seem to be the death arena." Earl Rose's eyes were still red, but his voice was calm. Norsta was completely oppressed by the nobles, and he was drenched in cold sweat. "Earl Rose, I can explain this." "No need. In order to save time, I've already asked on the way here." Countess Rose said calmly. "Your subordinates are quite cooperative." Norsta's expression changed drastically. He gritted his teeth and screamed against the suppression of the nobles. Then he turned into hundreds of bats and rushed toward the window on the upper floor. Rose Countess sighed. She stretched out her hand and pulled. Then She pulled the hundreds of bats down from the air. Then, Rose Earl's figure flashed out. Among the hundreds of bats, she directly reached out and grabbed one of them. Then, she forcefully pressed it to the ground. Boom! More than half of the floor in the hall shattered. The bats disappeared one by one, and Norsta's body sank into the broken floor, twitching nonstop. Spare me. Nosta looked at Rose Countess weakly, his eyes full of pleading. Norsta, you're not under my direct command. You were sent by the dynasty. However, as an upper-level earl, if I want to kill you, no one will dare to say anything. So be it. Earl Rose sighed slowly. Do you understand? Norsta's face turned ashen. Rose Countess tapped Norsta's forehead. A blood-red mark appeared, and Norsta's face turned ashen. His body withered a lot in an instant. Send Norsta to the dungeon first. Without my permission, no one is allowed to come close. Rose Countess looked around at the silent warriors in black armor and said coldly, I am the ruler of this God-blessed city. The warriors in black armor brought Norsta, who had been stripped of his power, out of fear. However, the atmosphere in the hall was still tense. The dungeon owner's party was silently dealing with the Rose Countess in front of them. A drop of cold sweat slid down the back of the dungeon leader's neck. Why didn't you kill Norsta? He lied to you and broke your rules. He even controlled everything in secret. How can you tolerate that? The dungeon leader said slowly. Everyone's face tensed up. No wonder he was the instigator of this operation. It's my business whether I kill him or not. Earl Rose frowned and looked at the man in the iron mask. It's also my business how I deal with him. I'm the ruler of God-blessed city. This ends here. You can go back. Go back. Everyone was stunned and looked at this Count Rose in disbelief. I don't plan to be enemies with humans, Earl Rose said calmly. Rose Earl said calmly. From now on, there will be no more so-called selections. Everything will return to the original death arena. Everything will follow the original rules. I will attend every selection in the future. That's all. You can go now. Guards, send the guests out. Hearing this, the black-armored warriors braced themselves and stepped forward. But no matter what, if the Count did not pursue the matter, it meant that this matter was likely to be over. The warriors in black armor heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that only the instigator, Lord Norsta, would be punished. Who is the owner of the dungeon here? Rose Earl suddenly asked. Everyone subconsciously turned their gazes to Mr. Allen. Mr. Allen could only silently take a step forward. You stay, the Earl of Rose said indifferently. Then, as if he had noticed something, he glanced behind. You stay too. He was looking at the muscular man who had just escaped from Norsta's clutches when no one was paying attention. He was trying to sneak away. Kill me if you want. If I frown, I'll kill him then. Earl Rose. I'm willing to stay. While cleaning up the corpses, the black-armored warriors realized that two people were missing. One of them was the girl that Norsta had taken away, the one who was supposed to be the victor. The other one was the youngest one among the 10 boys and girls on the list. Quick, report it. You guys have no morals. Senior sister, Yulia, was mentioned at this moment. She had reached the level where she could fight 4 people. Then, 6 warriors in black armor rushed in and pinned her to the ground. She couldn't turn into mist, couldn't use star creation, and didn't have the ability to break the limits of the human body. As for spirit explosion, it was a last resort. Anyway, she tried her best. Take her away. Earl Rose wants to see her. Far away in the sky, in Laputa, which was known as the last pure land of the human race, after more than 10 years of development, the human race reshaped a bustling capital city. In the new headquarters of the God-blessed church, in the office of the Foreign Affairs Department, a noble woman was reading the documents on her desk with her head lowered. Suddenly, a white pigeon flew in from the window and landed on the desk in front of the woman. It was a carrier pigeon. It brought some important information to the woman. After the woman carefully read this information, she fell into silence. After a long time, there was a knock on the door, which interrupted the woman's contemplation. The one who entered was a knight in golden armor. Lady Isabel, the Pope wants to see you. He has something to discuss with you. Got it. The woman nodded and lit up the note in her hand. Do you know what it is? The handsome knight said, I'm afraid it's about the distribution of resources. Those nobles are here to protest. A bunch of vermin. The woman, Lady Isabel, sneered. Let's go. Don't let the Pope wait for too long. End of chapter. Chapter 2287. The golden-armored knight silently followed behind the woman, blindly following her every step. She was a woman with a very high authority in the new church. Ever since the humans retreated from Laputa, a large number of new nobles had emerged among the survivors in just a few decades. Miss Isabel was one of the best among these new nobles. Not only was she beautiful, but she also had amazing skills. Other than that, she was also fatally attractive to both men and women. However, such an excellent woman was still single, even though the number of suitors could line up all the way to the city gate. Lady Isabel, please. In front of the Pope's study, the guard respectfully welcomed Isabel into the room. She looked at the old man inside. He looked like he had 1 foot in the grave. No matter how you looked at him, he didn't look like he would live for more than a few days. However, he managed to stay alive until today. Other than relying on the excellent team of doctors, it was more because he secretly took some forbidden drugs. You're here, Isabel. Pope. The Pope took off his glasses and pinched his eyebrows. You probably know why I asked you to come. I know a little. Isabel nodded. What do you think? The Pope looked up and asked. The old man's eyes were full of spirit, which was completely different from his decaying body. The old nobles clung to the glory of the sunset. They can't keep up with the development of Laputa, Isabel said calmly. There are too many nobles in Laputa. We can simplify it when the time is right. The Pope pondered for a moment and made a decision. Then I'll leave it to you. Isabel, I know you can solve this problem perfectly. There's nothing perfect in this world. Isabel shook her head. This would be a terrible thing. The Pope sighed. We don't have much time. Laputa can't hold on for much longer. You know that. Of course she knew. This was a huge city floating in the sky above the continent. After 15 years of overloaded operation, its resources were almost exhausted. We need a new source of energy, the Pope said in a low voice. We have to open the door in the city of God blessing again. My people are already working hard, Isabel said slowly. Perhaps there will be news soon. I hope so. The old man slowly closed his eyes. He waved his hand, and Isabel left without a word. The old man's body was too weak. He couldn't maintain the office for more than 2 hours a day. The rest of the time, he could only rely on sleeping. When Isabel arrived at the door, she looked back at the old man on the chair for the last time. The old man had already lowered his head. Elohim, the name of the Pope. It used to be the throne of the Pope of the God bless the Church. Now it belonged to the Earl Rose. Rose Countess, who was sitting on the throne, looked very elegant. It was just that her appearance was a little sloppy. Of course, that could be ignored. He owned the entire city of God blessing. Under the throne, the owner of the dungeon stood alone. That muscular man also stood there. Then, a few warriors in black armor brought Yulia over. The senior sister didn't scold the black-armored warriors for being immoral. She just stared blankly at the girl standing beside Rose Countess. Kalili. Then it was Rose Countess. Sakes, the owner of Rose Mansion. I was right. Rose Countess, who was sitting on the throne, held her chin and tapped her temple with her fingers. The atmosphere in the palace was very quiet. Her eyes suddenly fell on the owner of the dungeon. Your name is Alan? That's right. The owner of the dungeon stood up. Rose Countess frowned and said slowly, I heard from my men that you once called yourself a vampire hunter. The owner of the dungeon, Mr. Allen, didn't say anything and turned his head away. Rose Countess shook her head and said, I don't know if you touched the inheritance of a vampire hunter, but you are definitely not. The owner of the dungeon looked back. The iron mask completely covered his expression, but it couldn't hide his narrowed eyes. Rose Countess sighed and said, I can give you a chance to live, as long as you remove the mind rewriting spell on K-Air Lily. I can let bygones be bygones for what you plan this time. How can you guarantee that? The owner of the dungeon was silent for a while and asked tentatively. No promise. It's up to you. Rose Countess said calmly. I can also remove the mind rewriting spell. It will only take me a few days. If you don't want this chance to live, then take her down, send her out, and execute her outside the square as a warning to others. Instantly, a group of murderous black-armored warriors walked toward the owner of the dungeon, Mr. Allen. Boss Asakes has changed. Senior Sister Yulia couldn't help but blink her eyes. This guy is no longer the salted fish that he used to be. Now, he looks like a domineering CEO. However, his decisiveness in doing things is similar to that of Ms. Maid in the shop. Prepare some materials for me, the owner of the dungeon said in a deep voice from his heart. Take him down first. Rose Countess waved her hand. Satisfy his request. Two black-armored warriors grabbed the owner of the dungeon with both hands and quickly escorted him out of the main hall. Rose Countess' gaze finally landed on the muscular man. Name: Hercules. Never heard of it. Rose Countess tilted her head. Where'd you find the silver dust bullets on you? The muscular man who called himself Hercules, said simply, I found it in a ruin. It should be a former stronghold of the God-blessed church. Rose Countess, his eyes lit up slightly. A stronghold of the God-blessed church. What else is there besides weapons? That stronghold has been severely damaged, Hercules said. Hercules said, there are only a small number of usable weapons. The rest are mostly useless. Rose Countess looked for a black-armored warrior. Then, she looked at Hercules and said, wait, he will lead a team of warriors. Take them to that stronghold and bring everything back. Remember, everything, even if it's just a piece of scrap paper. Hercules, when you come back, I can pardon your sins and let you continue to live here. Really? Hercules' eyes suddenly lit up, and he seemed to be pleasantly surprised. Rose Countess said, before you leave, send your family, friends, or one of your subordinates to me. When you come back, I will pick them up. Hercules' face suddenly became a little embarrassed. You can leave too. Rose Countess waved her hand again, and she was still quite decisive. When only Yulia was left, there were suddenly no more black-armored warriors in the hall. These black-armored warriors had been ordered to leave by Rose Countess. Rose Countess suddenly asked after a moment of silence, Do you know who I am? Yulia replied tentatively, You are the master of the God-blessed city. But Rose Countess shook her head. Yulia looked at Lily, who happened to be looking at her. There seemed to be some encouragement in her eyes. The senior gritted her teeth and decided to save the trouble. She directly laid her cards on the table and said, I know you are Lily's boss, Mr. Asakes of Rose Mansion, the descendant of the Sage family. However, Rose Countess still shook her head at this moment and even sighed. Lily looked at the man on the throne beside her in surprise, and Yulia couldn't help but show a confused expression. TSK. Rose Countess sighed slowly. Ms. Yulia, how can you forget me? I'm the honorary president of your fan club. Yulia's eyes widened. She suddenly felt like beating this guy to death. What should she do? A honorary president? It's just a name. Rose Countess chuckled and showed nostalgic expression. I'm just the founder. With a group of like-minded friends, we formed a fan club for Holy Maiden. However, those guys would change their wives every few years. Later, I felt that it was meaningless, so I temporarily quit. However, my name is still there. Lily looked at this man suspiciously. Due to mind rewriting, her memory was in a mess, and she couldn't connect the dots, but subconsciously, she didn't seem to agree with him. She felt like it was because Mansion didn't have much business afterward, and Boss Asakes couldn't take out the funds. He was also afraid of being despised by his friends, so he used the excuse of not working together. Let's not talk about this anymore. Rose Countess smiled faintly. Ms. Yulia, I know you have a lot of questions in your heart, and so do I. However, too many things happened today, and the sun is about to rise. So, if you have anything to say, let's leave it for another night. That's it? Yulia couldn't help but frown. Should I take off my disguise and go to the toilet? In that case, he should be able to speak properly, right? This is better. I need to calm down. Yulia nodded slowly. Most importantly, she discovered that 11 had disappeared again. Rose Countess didn't immediately return to the library, even though her rationality kept urging her to go back. However, she still went to the underground prison of the castle first. This was the place where God blessed the church, used to imprison some terrifying vampires and thugs. Even the war 15 years ago didn't affect the facilities in this prison. The guards who were guarding this place had been ordered to leave. Rose Countess stood in front of Nasta. Nasta's hands were pierced by iron hooks, and his whole body was hanging from the ground. "Ass sakes, let me go, let me go." Mr. Nasta raised his head with difficulty, and a glimmer of hope appeared in his eyes. We are. I didn't kill you directly because we came from the same place," Rose Countess said indifferently. Rose Countess said calmly, "Mr. Norsta, do you know that you've ruined my trust in you? Trust is a good thing. How could you ruin it? Those are just food." Mr. Nosta's face was filled with madness. "Ass sakes, I'm your friend. I'm the only one who knows where you came from. I'm the only one who can talk to you about the things you want to talk about. I'm your only friend. I'm not that reclusive." Rose Countess shook her head. "Plus, I'm afraid I can't afford to have a friend like you as a Grand Scholar. I was tricked by another Grand Scholar in the past." "You mean Calvin?" Mr. Nasta seemed to have thought of something and subconsciously frowned. "That's not important." Rose Countess sighed slowly. "Mr. Nasta, this is the last time I see you. This will be your home in the future. After becoming a vampire, you've forgotten the purpose of being a free person. According to the saint's words, we're free and shouldn't be bound by anything. Now, you become a slave to bloodlust. Please, reflect on yourself." After saying that, Rose Countess turned around and left without hesitation. Mr. Nasta let out an angry roar in the cage. You F***king bastard. The saint didn't say that. I'm the leader of the Purcell School. How could I not know? I can recite the saint's words backwards. Come back. Ass sakes. You come back. The Rose Earl had already covered his ears and walked away with small steps, as if he didn't recognize anyone. Boss. She used all her strength to shout this incomparably familiar name in the depths of the castle's library. "Don't force yourself." Rose Countess gently rubbed Kay forehead Lily's head. After returning to the library, he no longer had that terrifying pressure. He was like an otaku, like a salted fish, like the boss of Rose Mansion in her memory. "Let me show you something," Rose Countess suddenly said. The girl opened her mouth slightly. Rose Countess walked to a bookshelf and turned on the mechanism. Then, the bookshelf slowly moved aside, revealing a secret passage that led underground. He took an oil lamp and walked into the secret passage. The girl hurriedly followed. "I've been here for more than 16 years. Rose Countess's voice came from the front of the passage. "These years, many things have happened. These things even made me forget who I am. If you didn't come this time, perhaps I would continue to stay here until one day, completely forgetting my original appearance." Boss. The girl quickly stepped forward and reached out to grab his arm, exerting force. "I'm just kidding." Rose Countess smiled and shook her head. "Just kidding. How can I forget who I am? Even if I want to forget, he won't let me." The girl subconsciously raised her head. This was the end of the secret passage. Rose Countess raised the oil lamp in her hand and illuminated the space in front of her. This. The girl couldn't organize her words. It was a stone platform, and a black-haired man was lying on top of the stone platform. There was a sharp sword stabbed into the man's body. The most powerful vampire hunter. Rose Countess, Mr. Assakes murmured. He is? I don't know." Mr. Assakes shook his head and said with a bitter smile, "Maybe, maybe not. But he can't tell me the answer now, can he?" Chapter 2288. Looking at the man on the stone platform who was pierced by a sharp sword, Kay forehead Lily moved closer to take a closer look. She carefully looked at the man called Mr. Assakes. She couldn't find the right words to express her thoughts, but it didn't stop her from taking in the information. She felt that D was the same as Zhu, whom she met before. They should be the same, but she had a feeling that D was much older than Zhu. He's dead. He's not dead. Mr. Asakes moved closer to K, forehead Lily, but it's not easy for him to wake up. He's a special existence here. He has a curse on him that allows him to use the abilities that only vampires have. But under normal circumstances, he's still considered human. K, forehead Lily looked at him in confusion. I'm not sure. Mr. Asakes smiled bitterly. In fact, I didn't spend much time with him. We didn't even have time to talk. 15 years ago, when I came to the city of God's blessing, a lot of things happened in just a few days. Who did it? K, forehead Lily pointed at the sword in Dis body. Mr. Asakes' eyes flashed with a strange light, and a dusty memory flashed in his mind. The headquarters of the Vatican was on fire, and blood and screams existed together. In his despair, he saw the man clutching his sword tightly with both hands. At that moment, the sword was already stabbed into Dis' chest. She saw him, but she didn't say anything. She clenched her teeth and ran away in the chaos. Now, it was unknown whether she had escaped to Laputa, the last pure land of humans. I don't know. When I came, it was already like this, Mr. Asakes said softly. Kalili subconsciously reached out her hand to touch the sword in front of her. But Mr. Arthasheth stopped her and demonstrated it himself. The moment his finger touched the blade, a flash of lightning flashed. When he turned around, one of Asakes' fingers had been blasted into a bloody mess. Boss, it's okay. It's just a small wound. Mr. Asakes shook his head. The bloody finger was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. He sighed and said, all these years, I've been trying to pull the sword out of this body, but I couldn't find a way. They left the secret room in the library where D was kept. K, forehead Lily felt a little more relaxed, as if she was far away from the secret. But as long as Mr. Asakes was by her side, she would always be able to feel safe. It had nothing to do with whether or not Mr. Arthasheth had become a vampire or whether or not he had great power. All these years, the instinct of being a vampire has been eroding me. Mr. Asakes sat down and looked at the hazy white light in the distant sky through the curtain. Now, just looking at the morning sun is a luxury. K, forehead Lily held his hand gently. Asakes closed his eyes gently. Maybe it's because of the existence of D. Maybe it's because even though he has become like this, there's still some kind of power in him. This kind of power can always remind me of who I am. I found a way. The girl couldn't help but clench her hand. Mr. Asakes smiled and said, it's not that easy. Maybe there's no solution at all. I've been waiting here for too long. Of course, you know me. I'm not the kind of person who will give up easily. K, forehead Lily nodded silently. I'm sleepy. I'll sleep and wake up at night. Mr. Asakes said slowly, I've already given the order. The black-armored soldiers outside will listen to your orders. Those guys are not real vampires, so they can endure the sunlight. However, they will be weakened by half during the day. K, forehead Lily nodded again. Mr. Asakes continued, be careful of the guy named Aaron. Wait until I wake up to remove the aftereffects of mind rewriting. No matter what he says to you, don't believe it. I know what he knows, and I'll definitely know more than him. I almost have all the knowledge in this world. I'm not leaving, the girl said softly. But Mr. Asakes had already fallen asleep on the table. At the last moment, a thick black cloth even fell on the window, completely blocking the dazzling light in the sky. The girl didn't choose to leave at this time. She just carefully took a lamp and lit it. Then she sat on the desk. There was paper and pen. Although she couldn't organize words, maybe she could try to use words. Even if it was equally difficult, she could still write something down completely. It was about the things that had happened to her when she was a pilot. In the wilderness, horses were galloping. A group of black-armored soldiers from the city of God Blessing and a muscular man, Hercules. Suddenly, Hercules reined in his horse and pointed to a mountain peak in front. It's in front. There's a cave there. At the end is the abandoned stronghold I mentioned. The leader of the black-armored soldiers looked at Hercules with a blank expression, then waved his hand and said, "Go in alone to investigate." In an instant, a black-armored soldier rushed out. The rest of the black-armored warriors rode their horses around Hercules at this time. "I've already surrendered to your count," Hercules said helplessly. "Buddy, you don't have to do this, right?" The black-armored soldiers didn't speak. They just wanted to carry out their mission. They didn't have any other thoughts. They had been instigated by Norsta and had committed a capital crime. Now, Rose Earl didn't pursue the matter and only punished Norsta. They were already grateful that they could survive. As for their bloodthirsty instincts, they didn't have the mood to think about it now. Hercules frowned and said, "In the end, I rebelled against you because Norsta went too far. Now that the Count is willing to appear, I've set things right. If the city of God Blessing can let people live, I won't have any bad intentions." "I hope you remember what you said," the leader of the black-armored soldiers replied indifferently. This muscular man was really a King talkative guy. Along the way, Hercules didn't stop talking. He kept looking for opportunities to talk to the others. "Report." The soldier came back. "There's indeed an abandoned stronghold inside, but there aren't many things left." The Count said to take away even a piece of scrap paper. The leader of the black-armored soldiers said directly, "Hurry up. We must return before dark." "Yes." As he spoke, the black-armored warrior leader used an iron chain to tie Hercules to a large rock. Then, he began to move Hercules into the cave. "Hey, sir, I can help too. I'm familiar with the way inside." Hercules shouted calmly. "It may be dangerous. I've warned you." But no one paid attention to him. Hercules narrowed his eyes and sat down cross-legged. He quietly unscrewed his mechanical arm and took out a palm-sized wooden tube. When the tube was unscrewed, a small pigeon slowly poked its head out. "Chirp, chirp, little baby, quickly return to your master's side." Suddenly, a scream came from the depths of the cave. Hercules leaned against the big rock with his hands as a pillow. He was humming something. After a while, a group of people in black armor slowly walked out of the cave. They were no longer the same group of people. The treatment was undoubtedly the best. At the very least, it was the best treatment that could be provided in this environment. Senior sister, Yulia, was in a trance at this moment. She was sitting in front of a dressing table and had changed her clothes. There were even 2 maids waiting on her. The black-armored soldiers in the castle also became well-behaved and respectful. This was probably an order from Countess Rose. "How long have you been here?" Senior sister, Yulia, asked the 2 maids who followed her closely. "I've been here for more than a year." She was a bit later than me, but it has been more than half a year, Miss Yulia, the maid replied softly. Senior sister, Yulia, asked, "Does your countess have to sleep during the day?" "She has always been like this." The maid nodded. "During the day, the countess hibernates in the library." Senior sister, Yulia, asked curiously, "She just sleeps like this? Isn't she afraid of danger? I mean, she should find a secret place or something like that." The maid said, "I heard that she's just sleepy, but once she's stimulated a little, she'll wake up immediately. Furthermore, without my lord's permission, those people outside wouldn't be able to stay here." Senior sister, Yulia, fell silent. In this world, only vampires with special powers seemed to exist. The rest were all ordinary people. At most, they were at the limit of an ordinary person's body and were slightly stronger in martial arts. However, such people could only fight against vampires with special weapons. Low-level vampires or half-finished products like the black-armored soldiers. Those who were slightly stronger, such as Nastas, were practically unbeatable. Were those at the level of Rose Earl already considered outside the realm of martial arts? But if the 2 sides were so unequal, how did the God bless the church suppress vampires for hundreds of years? By the way, do you know where Master Nasta is now? Senior sister, Yulia, suddenly asked. The 2 maids looked at her suspiciously. The senior sister smiled and said, "I almost died in Nasta's hands, so I'm a little concerned about his fate." "Master Nasta is locked in the deepest part of the dungeon," the maid said slowly. "Also, The Countess has given the order to completely seal that place. No one is allowed to open it. Ms. Yulia, don't worry. I'm afraid that Master Nasta won't be able to come out. After all, he did those things that offended the Countess. That's good, that's good. Ah, I'm relieved. By the way, do you have anything to eat here? Senior sister, Yulia, blinked and said, I'm talking about food that's suitable for me. Don't worry, we're humans too. The two maids smiled and said, there's normal food here, and there's a lot of it. Please wait a moment. Senior sister, Yulia, lightly nodded. It wasn't until the two maids left that she leaned against the door. After confirming that the footsteps were far away, she walked around the room carefully. Senior sister, Yulia, lowered her voice and called out. There was no response. Senior, I know you're here. Come out, don't hide. Senior sister, Yulia, called out again. There was still no response. Huh, I see you. Senior sister, Yulia, sneered. You still don't want to come out? If you don't come out, I'll call for help. I'll call for help. Still, there was no response. She couldn't help but hug her arms and sit on the big soft bed. Her brain wasn't enough to process all this, so she started rubbing her head with her hands. Suddenly, she opened her eyes. Hercules, I remember now. Senior sister, Yulia, couldn't help but exclaim. Isn't this the person who completed the 12 trials and sculpted countless exposed little breasts? Is this the statue's exposure maniac? It can't be so coincidental. Senior sister bit her finger in surprise. It's probably just the same name. At this moment, the door of the room suddenly opened. The door was opened, but no one came in. Senior sister, Yulia, frowned and walked to the door suspiciously. Then, she opened the door completely. However, there was no one in the corridor outside the door. What happened? Senior sister, Yulia, froze. Did they want me to sneak out? Then, I'll just sneak out. After all, Mr. Assakes seems to be an LSP. With the character, Yulia, it shouldn't be a problem. It was a combination of steam and machinery. It was a ship that could move in the sky. At this moment, it was landing in the wilderness. The monsters wandering on the ground were instantly attracted to it. However, as soon as they got close, rays of light shot out from the spaceship directly penetrated the monsters' bodies. Elimination complete. Landing complete. Entering stealth mode. Send out scouting knights. A series of orders came out from the pilot's cabin. At this time, the one who issued the orders was a handsome young knight wearing golden armor. Hell, how long has it been since you set foot on this land? A woman's low voice slowly sounded behind the young knight. He quickly turned around and looked at the woman who was really controlling the spaceship almost obsessively. 3 years ago, I had a mission to collect information, so I came here once. Really? The woman chuckled. I haven't landed for 15 years and 6 months. Hell, accompany me to get off the ship. Yes, Lady Isabel. End of this chapter. Chapter 2289. Ms. Yulia, the food you asked for, the maid's voice gradually trailed off. The curtains on the bed had been drawn down, and they could only vaguely see a covered figure. Since this was an important guest of account, they didn't dare to disturb her. Maybe she's too tired. Yeah, after all, so many things have happened. It wasn't like that. In just one night, Mr. Norsta lost his power and was punished by the Count. He was sent to the dungeon. Now, in the castle, the black-armored warriors were still in a panic, let alone these lowly maids. Not daring to disturb her, the two maids slowly left the room. They could only wait outside the door for the guests to wake up. They were people who survived the vampires. Although they had to contribute some blood from time to time, their lives were much better than before. Not everyone was unwilling to be enslaved. Hey, that's just a pillow, right? Yes, some people's lives were just lives. They could only live on. She should have discovered it by now. Yulia quietly muttered to herself. At this time, she was following a certain mark. She felt that the mark she set up before leaving couldn't be hidden for long. However, this castle was too big, and she didn't have the ability to turn into mist and pass through walls, so her efficiency was greatly reduced. Moreover, she had to avoid the black-armored warriors patrolling the castle as much as possible. She didn't know who opened the door to her room. It was most likely the missing senior, 11. However, after thinking about it carefully, Madanzo didn't seem to have the need to use such a method. Therefore, the purpose of opening the door to let her out was very obscure. Moreover, after leaving the room, the mark that guided her appeared. She didn't have to be too careful of the patrolling black-armored warriors. The existence of the mark seemed to have planned a safe route for her until she arrived in front of an iron door. This seemed to be the way to the underground of the castle. The dungeon? The iron door was slightly ajar. Yulia gently pushed open the iron door and poked her head in. There were no guards inside. She opened the iron door completely, but she didn't enter. Instead, she stood in front of the door and looked around silently. 3 seconds later, senior sister, Yulia, chose to turn around and leave, at the speed of lifting her skirt and running away. Do you take me for a fool? I'm a witch who can push her curiosity to the ground. D failed? In the depths of the dungeon, Lord Norsta, who was hung up with an extremely pale expression, couldn't help but become absent-minded. A black shadow was currently outside the cage, hidden in the shadows. How could it fail? I told you to lure her in. The Earl has regained control of the castle. You should know that I can't do much. This is already the limit. The shadow in the darkness said slowly, that woman walked all the way here, but left right outside the door. She's too careful. I don't care. You have to bring her to me. I'm sorry. I've already said that I'll only help you once. The shadow in the dark said indifferently, I've already seduced her according to your request. In the end, she wasn't tempted, but I've done what I promised you. Is this how you treat your master? Norsta's gaze was fierce. My master, I'm honored that you chose me among all the black armors and made me a true vampire, the shadow said indifferently. But this also keeps me in the darkness forever. I don't even dare to appear in front of the Earl. I'm afraid that he'll find out that my bloodline comes from you. You're already a sinner. As someone who has your bloodline, I'll never be able to see anyone. I really have to thank you for that. You think I'll be imprisoned here forever? Norsta sneered. You don't understand. Everyone doesn't understand my relationship with Asakes. He won't really kill me. He'll let me leave this place sooner or later. Think about it. After all these years, why did I gain his trust? Why? A curious voice came from the darkness. Because I know a secret about him. Norsta chuckled. Because of this secret, he won't be willing to kill me. I'll regain control of everything sooner or later. Think about whether you want to continue being loyal to me or not. I want to know the secret, the shadow suddenly said. Norsta narrowed his eyes. If you continue to work for me, I'll tell you the secret sooner or later. But I don't want to be loyal to you. The voice in the darkness sounded again with a trace of coldness. Anyone. A hand covered in black armor slowly extended into the cage, and within the black armored hand, there was even a sharp blade in it. A silver blade, a mithril weapon. You. Norsta instantly widened his eyes. The sharp blade slowly pierced into Norsta's heart. The attribute damage caused by mithril to vampires made Norsta feel an unprecedented pain. His heart was burned. His whole body twitched and his face twisted. You're the source of the bloodline. But without you, I'm the source of the bloodline. I won't be controlled by anyone anymore. The wailing stopped. The door of the dungeon closed again. The way back. Isn't this the right way? Senior sister, Yulia, frowned. She didn't go back the way she came from according to the mark. Instead, she chose another path. Obviously, she had taken a wrong path. Stop! Who's there? A voice suddenly appeared behind her. Yulia was startled, but she maintained a calm expression and slowly turned around. A warrior in black armor appeared behind her. He had a helmet in his hand. His skin was pale, his face was delicate, and his hair was short and white. He was a man, but he had an appearance that women would be jealous of. He was too feminine. This was Yulia's first thought. She said in a low voice, I want to return to my room, but I seem to have taken the wrong path. The structure of the east and west wings of the castle is the same. It's completely symmetrical, the warrior said indifferently. Ms. Yulia, your room is in the west wing. This is the east wing. You are? You know me? I'm Griffith, one of the captains of the Black Armor Warrior Squad. The white-haired man smiled and bowed. Of course we know you. You're the honorable guest of the Earl. The Count has already given the order to treat you with absolute respect. Yulia blinked her eyes and said cautiously, "That, Mr. Griffith, can you take me back?" "Of course, it's my honor," the captain of the Black Armor Warrior Squad said very politely. She tried her best to get some useful information out of Griffith. "Mr. Griffith, do you know when the Earl usually wakes up?" "Sorry, I rarely enter the castle. The Earl has always been taken care of by Mr. Norsta, so I'm not very clear." "Mr. Griffith, how long have you been here?" "It should be a long time. After all, you're already a captain. You're really amazing." "I've been here for a long time, but there are many excellent warriors in the castle, and many of them are stronger than me. I'm just an ordinary one. By the way, Mr. Griffith, I have a friend who also participated in this selection. He's not old, about 11 or 12 years old. But too many things happened last night, so we got separated. Have you seen him?" "A child of 11 or 12 years old." Griffith frowned. "I wasn't in charge of the corpse last night. I'll help you find out later." "Thank you so much, Mr. Griffith. We're here. This is your room, Ms. Yulia." The feminine and even handsome man pointed to the room in front of them. In front of the door, two maids were looking at them in surprise. "Ms. Yulia, how did you—" The two maids hurriedly came forward. "You didn't find him?" Yulia opened her mouth in surprise, and then she casually made up an excuse. At this time, Griffith also said goodbye. He didn't stay, but before he left, he said that he would pay attention to the missing child. Before Yulia entered the room, she quietly glanced at a corner of the corridor. The mark was gone. In the library, Rose Countess sat with an awkward expression. The situation was like this. The girl who was engrossed in writing something suddenly thought of something and walked over. She directly pulled his ear and pulled him up. "Kate or Lily, listen to me." The girl slammed a piece of paper with a message on it onto the table with great force. "A man's mouth, a liar. Liar. What did he say before?" In order to prevent herself from being eroded by her bloodthirsty nature and to maintain her fragile sanity, she didn't dare to close her eyes to sleep for more than 10 years. She was afraid that she would no longer be herself when she woke up. Kate or Lily was so heartbroken at that time. She wished that she was the one who suffered. But now, after saying a bunch of sentimental words and tricking the little maid in the mansion into tears, this guy fell asleep. 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 She finally reacted. Humph. The little maid crossed her arms, sat on the chair, and turned her face to the side. "I can really explain, but it's not clear. But look at the dark circles under my eyes. It's definitely not a lie. I really haven't had a good night's sleep in the past decade or so." Arthashi smiled bitterly and said, "But look at my dark circles." The little maid still didn't turn her face. "The sunlight will weaken me." Mr. Asakes shook his head and even opened the curtain. It was already noon, and the sunlight was fierce. The sunlight shone on him, and his skin instantly emitted a lot of smoke, accompanied by a sizzling sound. Kate or Lily's face changed slightly, and she blurted out worriedly, "Don't." Mr. Asakes instantly closed the curtain. Kate or Lily looked at him with grievance. Mr. Arthashes coughed awkwardly, and the burned skin on his body gradually recovered. He looked at the manuscript on the table and asked, "What's written on it?" Kate or Lily frowned, but still said after thinking for a while, "Experience." "Your previous experience?" Mr. Asakes quickly picked up the paper and said in surprise, "Oh, right, there's such a thing." The little maid of Rose Mansion suddenly rolled her eyes, helplessly looking at this guy who was either smart or an idiot. She suddenly realized. Suddenly, she felt as if she had returned to the days when there were only her and Mr. Asakes in Rose Mansion. He was always so unreliable, living a carefree life. Nothing changed. A smile quietly appeared on the girl's face. Mr. Asakes read the experience in his hand, and his face gradually became serious. He looked at Kay or Lily several times, and then read it again. "There are other worlds? How is this possible? No, if this is the case. No wonder. That day there were so many people who were swallowed by the black mud, but in these 10 years, I only met a few. So, suddenly Mr. Asash's face slightly changed, and his whole body froze. He looked at Kay Lily in shock, and hesitated. Kay Lily, is the thing about Ludic true? The girl nodded silently. Mr. Arthashes sat down weakly. Is that so? That guy turned into a monster and disappeared? He rushed out. Rushed out. Where did he go? Outside the crack. What is this? Oh, boss. The girl walked to his side and patted him on the shoulder. Mr. Asakes took a deep breath and shook his head. That guy is a scourge. I don't believe he will die like this. Don't worry. I'm fine. I can handle it. The girl nodded with an encouraging look. Wow. Unexpectedly, Mr. Asakes suddenly hugged the little maid in front of him, buried his face in her chest, and cried while crazily washing his face. I can't handle it. Ludic, you died so miserably. So miserable. I can't handle it. I can't handle it. Padash. Cough. Nothing happened to Rose Countess's face. This body's recovery ability was strong. How could there be a bright red palm print left on it? At this time, the girl had already hidden under the bookshelf in the distance and looked at him with vigilance. Mr. Asakes awkwardly coughed twice, and when he was about to say something, there was a light knock on the door outside. It was the voice of the maid outside. Master, Mr. Hercules has come back, and he brought back a lot of things. Also, Mr. Allen is ready. He asked when we can start. Mr. Asakes glanced at Kay Forehead Lily under the bookshelf and said indifferently, Let Allen come first. Also, send the things Hercules brought back to the library, and then arrange a room for him. Let him wait. I will see him only when I want to see him. Okay. Mr. Asakes stood up at this time and waved at Kay Forehead Lily, but the girl didn't care and walked to the door by herself to wait. Mr. Asakes couldn't help but smile bitterly. He lowered his head and looked at the information Kay Forehead Lily had written on the table. Ludic, you can't really die. Muttering in his heart, he slowly exhaled. If he walked out of this room, he would be Rose Countess. Dimensional crevice, deep space forbidden zone. Countless corpses of the primordial void demons floated in the air. Two figures were currently sitting on a floating boulder. Wang Xiaohu had set up a fire and was roasting a dozen unknown meat skewers skillfully. Original demon meat skewers. Original demon meat skewers. Big meat skewers from the deep space forbidden zone. Fresh big meat skewers. Boss, do you want cumin noodles? That was a very strange pronunciation. Wang Xiaolong, who was wearing a white windbreaker, couldn't help but frown. Naturally, he didn't know what cumin noodles were. However, after the Yuan demon meat was roasted, it no longer had its original effect. He looked at Wang Xiaohu expressionlessly and casually picked up a raw bone, broke it, and directly sucked the bone marrow inside. What a waste. Wang Xiaohu sighed. I roasted this bone marrow last. As he spoke, Wang Xiaohu hit Wang Xiaolong on the head with an iron fist. Wang Xiaolong's neck was instantly twisted. He straightened his hands, and after touching a smear of bone marrow grease on his lips into his mouth, he didn't speak anymore and sat there in a daze. At this moment, Wang Xiaohu suddenly narrowed his eyes and directly flung out the meat skewer in his hand, the meat skewer that had been polished from a stone. In the deep space, a ray of light shot out like a shooting star and directly broke through the void original demon corpses floating around. End of chapter. Chapter 2290. Deep Space Forbidden Zone. Two powerful beings were currently hiding in the carcass of a dead void original demon. They were from an organization that specialized in selling all kinds of information, the Secret Society, which had recorders in the large quantum world. What they needed to monitor were two special targets. The source of the information was an anonymous lone traveler. The monitoring this time was mainly to determine the value of the target so that they could reward this anonymous lone traveler. This could be considered a very easy job, especially since they were very good at concealment techniques. What's that? Light? No. Meteor? Not good. A dazzling meteor flew past, and the carcass of the void original demon instantly turned into the tiniest specks of dust, including them who were hiding in the carcass of the void original demon. They didn't even have time to send out any information. In the distance, still on that floating boulder, Wang Xiaohu pursed its lips. I hit too hard, Sai too weak. It then dug out another boulder, polished it into the shape of a skewer, and then skewered a piece of raw meat. This time, it didn't roast it, but simply sprinkled some spices and handed it directly to Wang Xiaolong. If there's a chance, I'll let you try my handmade fish eggs. Wang Xiaohu suddenly laughed proudly. Where are we going next? Wang Xiaolong was silent for a long time before he threw out a question. During this time, Wang Xiaolong's questions had gradually increased. This was a good thing, because it meant that Wang Xiaolong's growth speed was gratifying. For Wang Xiaohu, this was naturally a good thing. It was rare for it to meet someone who seemed to be its own kind in the deep space forbidden zone. Not going anywhere, just strolling around. Wang Xiaohu said casually, these guys will keep entering the deep space forbidden zone, so we'll run into a few just by walking around. Right now, there's enough for us to eat. Why are they here? Wang Xiaolong continued to ponder. Wang Xiaohu said indifferently, I heard that someone has developed a new secret realm or something here, and there might be something they want, but in fact, it's just a trap. Trap? Wang Xiaolong pondered deeply. Wang Xiaohu thought for a moment and said, I went in and took a look. It seems to be a trap set up by a little girl with a terrible character and an old man. As for what they want to do, I didn't ask. Is that old man very powerful? Wang Xiaolong asked subconsciously. That old man is trash. The dangerous one is that little girl. She is completely mentally ill. Wang Xiaohu said, who cares? No matter what they want to do, isn't it enough for them to bring us food? If we want to get rich, we have to develop first. Wang Xiaolong nodded. I just remembered a place that has something we need. Where? Wang Xiaohu's interest was piqued. Holy Light Kingdom. Wang Xiaolong said slowly. Where? Wang Xiaohu's eyes lit up. I can't remember. Wang Xiaolong shook his head. My stupid dude. Wang Xiaolong felt that it was time to show his authority as a big brother. After eating the skewers in his hand, he hung Wang Xiaolong up and gave him a good beating. This was the daily life of the Longhu brothers in Deep Space Street. God bless City. Lily was lying flat on a metal bed in a special deconstructed room. It was a bit like a research lab. Mr. Asake said that this was the place where the internal researchers of God Bless Church used to do research. Inside the room, there was a pile of strange-looking instruments that were driven by some unknown power. They were piled up in a corner, leaving only a usable metal bed. An operating table? The owner of the dungeon, Alan, was carefully removing the last steel needle from Lily. Mr. Arthashi stood beside him and watched the entire process without batting an eyelid. Where did you get the mind rewriting technology? 15 years ago, the Holy See was ruined, and the headquarters of the Holy See was like an unguarded treasure house. Alan's hands were very steady. Even though he was being monitored the whole process, he didn't panic at all. How many things were lost at that time? Can you count them? Mr. Asake said, do you have a lot of God Bless Church as heritage in your hands? I collected some. The owner of the dungeon chuckled. If the Earl is interested, I'll send someone to deliver it later. The process of removing the steel needle was very smooth. The owner of the dungeon didn't play any tricks on the way. Mr. Asakes looked at Lily, who hadn't woken up yet, and frowned. What do you want? Life. The owner of the dungeon, Alan, said slowly, I need to survive. As he said, he stretched out his arm and rolled up his sleeves. The arm under the sleeves showed the appearance of a rotten corpse. Your body? I was eroded by some substance. The owner of the dungeon rolled up his sleeves. It kept eroding my body, allowing me to foresee my own death. I've tried all the treatment methods that I can think of, except for one. You want the bloodline that I give you? The owner of the dungeon said indifferently. I want to see you. I've tried all kinds of methods in the past few years, but Norsta became my biggest obstacle. Last night's chaos was my last gamble. I shouldn't be able to last until next month. If I don't agree, what can you do? Mr. Asake sneered. Are you going to use Lily's life to threaten me? I don't have a choice, do I? The owner of the dungeon said unhurriedly. Mr. Asakes said indifferently. The metal collar that you put on Lily's neck is just an ordinary metal. I've seen it. Not to mention now, even when God bless the church was still around, they didn't have this kind of remote control technology. The owner of the dungeon remained calm and even chuckled. If you don't care about Miss K or Lily, you can give it a try. Mr. Asake said, I'll give it a try. Without any hesitation, he stretched out his hands and pinched the metal collar on K or Lily's neck, crushing it instantly. This was out of his expectation. The owner of the dungeon fell into silence. I've told Kay or Lily that I know everything that you know, even more than you. Because my place here, Arthas tapped his head lightly and said calmly, can hold an entire civilization. Clap, clap, clap. The owner of the dungeon suddenly clapped his hands and chuckled. Have you ever thought about what if it really explodes? Of course. Mr. Asakes raised his hands indifferently. I've covered this place with a special power. Kay or Lily's body also has my power. Even if it explodes, it won't touch her. This is what you want, power. You didn't expect it, did you? You're stupid. I have a cheat. The owner of the dungeon slowly sighed. He took 2 steps back and then slowly knelt down on one knee. I will be your most loyal servant. During the time when you don't care about government affairs, God bless city is very stable under my rules. I've already shown my value. Kneeling for survival. This should be a proud guy. From his performance, there was no doubt about it. But now that he knelt down, it seemed to be enough to prove that he had reached a dead end. Everything seemed to be very reasonable. The air was quiet. The owner of the dungeon, Alan, lowered his head and didn't move. But Asakes could hear his heartbeat. The heartbeat was beating with a trace of nervousness and uneasiness. Something is corroding your body. Only then did Alan slowly raise his head. It's something called myriad essence. Universal essence? Mr. Asakes frowned slightly and said calmly, How did you get it? Tell me the whole story. The owner of the dungeon said, I've been collecting the heritage of the Holy See. A few years ago, I received a strange box from a homeless man. From the homeless man, I knew that it contained a substance called universal essence. It was one of the results of the research of God Bless Church for many years. That homeless man? I'm afraid that he was a clergyman left after the Holy See was defeated and fled. He might even be from the Research Institute. He had been protecting this box, but unfortunately, his body was probably contaminated. It was most likely contaminated by the universal essence in the box. When he died, his body directly rotted, just like me. The owner of the dungeon shook his head. I was greedy and opened the box. As a result, I became like this. Is the box still there? Mr. Asakes asked calmly. The owner of the dungeon said, The box is still there, but the universal essence has disappeared. One day, it suddenly vaporized. Mr. Asakes was muttering to himself. Time passed again. After a long time, he said slowly, You can stay in the castle for now. The eyes of the owner of the dungeon lit up with hope as he stared at Arthashes. But I won't give you the embrace right away, Mr. Asakes said calmly, because I'm afraid that the strange poison in your body will corrode me. I'm even more afraid that you'd rather use yourself as bait in order to kill a vampire. The owner of the dungeon took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, I have no reason to do so. Others might not. Mr. Arthashes smiled and said, But you might not be. The owner of the dungeon seemed to be a little bewildered. Mr. Asakes suddenly patted Alan's shoulder. Anyway, you can stay here first. When I've studied the thing in your body and there's no problem, I'll give you what you want. Universal essence. After leaving the research room, Mr. Asakes was thinking about this thing in his mind. He knew. Universal essence. Far more than what Alan said. He had collected almost all the documents of the God Bless Church that could be collected on the ground. Moreover, when the church retreated, they didn't have time to destroy all the documents, so there were still many left. Universal essence was a kind of energy called eternal power that the God Bless Church had been studying. Eternal power, perpetual motion machine. The free city where Asakes came from also had a basic law. Perpetual motion machines didn't exist at all, and even he, a slacker in the capital of Freedom Academy, knew about it. It was impossible to create such a thing. However, according to the documents left by the God Bless Church, they seem to have made a major breakthrough in this research. They even vaguely mentioned that they were about to successfully create a stable, eternal power, universal essence mother. It was a pity that the laboratory where the myriad essence, or mother, was made had been destroyed. Everything inside had been annihilated, leaving no trace behind. Not good, Earl. Two black-armored warriors hurried over and knelt before Asakes. What's the matter, Earl? Lord Norsta. Norsta was found dead in the dungeon. The iron hook used for hanging was hovering quietly. On the cold floor, there was only a set of dirty clothes left. Mr. Ashace was standing outside the cage at this moment. Norsta was dead. Moreover, it was a very deep death. This was something that he could feel, because there was still a huge will of despair, anger, and resentment left in the cage. These were the last remnants of Norsta's consciousness. I'm sorry, Earl, it's our negligence. We didn't take good care of him. Earl, please forgive us. Behind him, a group of black-armored warriors knelt down in fear. Negligence? Asakes said expressionlessly. Didn't take good care of him? Do you think Norsta would commit suicide? The black-armored warriors were terrified and speechless. No, he wouldn't commit suicide. Asakes shook his head. You even know who killed him. You just don't dare to say it. The black-armored warriors couldn't help trembling. Gather all the black-armored warriors. Asakes waved his hand and ordered, all of them, kill anyone who doesn't come. The black-armored warriors stood up slowly. Asakes said calmly, don't worry. No one here is the murderer. But if you can't gather all the black-armored warriors, you'll be judged as the murderer. They didn't dare to hesitate. They gathered all the black-armored warriors in the entire God-blessed city as fast as they could. In the dark cell, Mr. Asakes suddenly sighed. Is he going to die just like that? Well, it's a relief. Norsta, after you die, will your soul return to the free city? Will you be free? Somehow, it seemed to be pushed to this place by a pair of unimaginable hands. In front of a broken high tower in the headquarters of the God-blessed church. This area was destroyed after the war 15 years ago. It wasn't repaired after the war. It was just left there, being eroded by the wind and rain. The moss was mottled. Madanzo couldn't help but frown. It slipped away during the chaos last night, and then hid there. As if it was summoned, it was already here when it came back to its senses. What would happen? Madanzo didn't know that the deeper it went into the tower, the stronger the feeling became. This tower seemed to be used for living, but it didn't know who lived there. Madanzo went up the spiral stairs. It passed by rooms and looked at the names engraved on the door. They were probably the names of the owners of the rooms. It was about to reach the top of the tower. At this moment, Madanzo stopped and looked at one of the last few rooms. It looked at the name engraved on the door silently. How could it be this name? Madanzo's face was filled with disbelief, as if it was struck by lightning. Finally, it read the name engraved on the door, Elohim. How did you appear in the Book of Gaia? It suddenly pushed open the door. Chapter 2291. She had never been so eager to find an answer. When the door of the room was pushed open, she held her breath. She stared. In the empty room, there was nothing else except for a few necessary and dusty furniture. It was extremely simple. This seemed to mean that the former owner of the room had long given up on the pursuit of comfort. Madanzo slowly walked into the room with a trace of anxiety. This was simply an empty room that had been abandoned for a long time, and there were no useful clues left behind. That made sense. Rose Count had an almost abnormal pursuit of knowledge. If there was anything left here, it would have been taken away by Rose Count long ago. In fact, all the rooms that Madanzo had opened on their way to the tower were almost completely emptied. What? Nothing left behind? No, she was not a person who gave up easily. So she began to carefully explore this empty room. She did not believe that the invisible force was just to let her find this empty room. Elohim was one of his names. As expected, Madanzo took a deep breath and moved the wooden bed in the room. On the wall that was covered by the wooden bed, Madanzo found a cross symbol. However, there was a dark red snake wrapped around the cross symbol. Madanzo seemed to be able to see the snake wriggling on the cross symbol. She could even see every scale on the snake. The snake raised its head and looked straight ahead, as if it was looking straight at Madanzo herself. She quietly broke out in a cold sweat, as if the snake would come out of the wall at any time and directly swallow her. Huh! Madanzo suddenly shivered and immediately pushed the wooden bed back, completely covering the graffiti on the wall. The strange feeling that came from the bottom of her heart gradually disappeared. At this time, her face was not pale, but she was slightly panting. She might know what the cross symbol represented. Perhaps it also knew what the big snake wrapped around the cross symbol meant. What are you thinking? Madanzo silently sat on the wooden bed and let itself enter a deep meditative state. It wanted to use this method to try its best to feel the original mood of the person who painted on the wall. Was it effective? Madanzo did not know whether it was effective or not. It was just a subconscious action. However, what Madanzo did not expect was that this meditation took up a day and a night. In the main hall of the castle, almost all of the black-armored warriors had arrived, and there were even a few humans working in the castle. Rose Earl sat on the highest throne. No one admitted to killing Nasta, and there were no useful traces left at the scene. Therefore, it would not be easy to find out who the murderer was. The murderer probably didn't expect to be infected with a special mark after killing Norsta. It was a strange power called the Mark of Vengeance. It contained all the hatred and unwillingness of a vampire before death. Is everyone here? Rose Earl's voice echoed in the hall. He did not notice the black-armored warriors with the Mark of Vengeance. As for the black-armored warriors who already knew about Lord Nasta's death, they all lowered their heads. They wanted to maintain their silence. This was the best way, under the premise that they did not know who the murderer was. Griffith doesn't seem to be here. A black-armored warrior slowly walked out at this moment, with a trace of uncertainty in his voice. Lord Count, perhaps he wasn't notified properly, or perhaps he's carrying out a mission. Perhaps we can wait a little longer. However, the Earl's gaze suddenly fell on one spot. There were a dozen or so black-armored warriors kneeling in the last row. Rose Earl noticed them because they were still wearing their helmets. Soon, someone noticed the black-armored warriors in the back row. Whose subordinates are you? Don't you know that you are not allowed to hide in front of the Earl? In the silent hall, the black-armored warrior who coldly shouted walked to the last row. He stretched out his hand as if he was thinking about how to remove the helmets of the black-armored warriors. They are humans. At this moment, Rose Earl said with a clear mind. In an instant, the black-armored warriors were split into two groups. Their gazes were focused on the dozen or so black-armored warriors who were wearing helmets to cover their faces. Humans actually sneaked in. One group of black-armored warriors was shocked. It was not that they had never seen humans before. It was just that they had brazenly appeared here. They had to admit that their courage was commendable. Tell me, is it you? A powerful warrior in black armor walked out at this moment and lifted one of the helmeted men up with one hand. Another black-armored warrior walked out and took off the helmet of the black-armored warrior who was lifted up. They are indeed imposters. The black-armored warrior who took off the helmet took a deep breath and said angrily in a deep voice, "Tell me, who are you? Why did you sneak into the castle?" The black-armored warriors in the hall spread out and surrounded the impostors. "My lord, the black armor on these dozen fellows seems to belong to the team that escorted Hercules. Now that they're wearing black armor, it's very likely that the warriors of that team have already dash. Not long after, the imposter who had been lifted up actually let out a maniacal laugh. Filthy thing, take your hand away. You are arrogant? Humph. You're seeking death. Vampire, go to hell. Bam! With a huge sound, blood and flesh flew everywhere. The instant his identity was exposed, the black-armored man actually chose to protect himself. He did not even hesitate in the slightest. Rose Countess frowned. After the impostor self-detonated, his flesh and blood flew everywhere, and a faint smell of blood lingered in the air. This smell of blood stimulated the black-armored warrior's thirst for blood. Catch them. The black-armored warrior who was holding the impostor had one of his arms blown off. In his fury, this black-armored warrior forgot that he was still in the hall and that the real owner of the city of God Blessing was sitting on the throne behind him. Hearing this shrill scream, the black-armored warriors all took out their weapons and pointed them at the impostors. The operation failed. Retreat. Among the dozen or so impostors, a shout rang out in an instant. In the city, the impostors scattered and tried to break through the black-armored warriors' encirclement. Damn it, these guys have mithril weapons. Everyone be careful. After the incident with Norsta last night, many of the black-armored warriors had experienced the horrifying damage that mithril weapons could inflict on them. Seeing that only 3 impostors were able to escape, the leader of the black-armored warriors was so angry that he couldn't help but curse. You overestimate yourselves. Rose Countess snorted coldly. She waved her hand, and a defensive barrier appeared at every entrance and exit of the hall. Even though the mithril weapons could kill vampires, they couldn't break Rose Earl's barrier. After all, almost all the black-armored warriors in the city of God's protection were gathered in the palace. In just a short period of time, all of the impostors in the hall were captured. Rose Countess slowly walked down from the throne. Everyone made way for her, and she walked straight to one of the impostors. She squatted down and looked into his eyes. The impostor took a deep breath and looked at her without avoiding her gaze. Rose Countess, Mr. Essex asked calmly, "Do you know why I recognized you at first glance?" Why? He really wanted to know the answer. Mr. Essex chuckled and said, "Didn't you investigate me before you attacked me? I'm a noble among the vampires, and I have extraordinary senses toward humans. Since you could avoid the other black-armored warriors and walk into my castle, don't blame me for being cruel. These black-armored warriors in the castle must have been hungry for a long time. You will soon despair." A creepy smile appeared on the impostor's face. "They are here." Who? At this moment, black blood oozed out of the impostor's mouth. Mr. Essex frowned and reached out his hand to grab the impostor's chin. However, the impostor had already stopped breathing. "Break their jaws." Mr. Essex suddenly stood up. However, it was too late. The dozens of impersonators who were under control bit the poison hidden in their mouths. These impersonators actually chose to commit mass suicide. Humph! Mr. Essex snorted. "I deserve to die. I let them sneak in without knowing. I deserve to die." Mr. Essex waved his hand again. "They applied a special potion on their bodies, which can help them disguise your scent. If you deserve to die, then kill yourself 100 times. But no matter whether you deserve to die or not, they can still sneak in." These imposters weren't driven by mind rewriting. They were assassins and men of sacrifice who had undergone cruel training. "Bring Hercules to see me." Knock. Someone knocked on the door again. Yulia frowned. Earlier, the knocking on the door lured her to sneak out, but she didn't come back. She quickly put a table knife in her sleeve. This was the only weapon she could find so far. She hid it secretly when she came back to eat. "Who is it?" Yulia stuck to the door and asked with a hint of vigilance. "Miss Yulia, it's me, Griffith." Senior Yulia furrowed her brows. "Isn't this ridiculously handsome captain of the black-armored warriors squad a little too diligent? We just parted ways not too long ago." "Oh, it's Mr. Griffith. What's the matter?" "I just changed my clothes and was about to take a break." The door didn't open. "Miss Yulia, I think I found the child you've mentioned. Wait for me." After a while, the door slowly opened, and Yulia appeared in a simple dress. This was the first time she saw Griffith face to face. His appearance was still very stunning. However, Griffith's palms were rough. If it wasn't because of long-term training, then it should be because of long-term heavy work. "Do you really have news about that child?" "I found the place where the body was placed, and I did see the body of a child." Griffith thought for a while and said, "But I'm not sure if this child is the person you're looking for." "Miss Yulia, a body." Yulia was slightly moved. "I'm sorry," Griffith said apologetically. "Last night, many people were sacrificed." Yulia was silent. "Senior, 11 died. Did he die just like that?" "This was impossible. Even if she jumped down from here, Madanzo wouldn't die so easily. But in this strange page world, she and Madanzo couldn't use their abilities. She was still okay. At least, she had a slightly grown body and could barely fight. However, Madanzo was a child at this time, and she couldn't even win against her. Where are they? Why are they gone? Yulia suddenly looked around the door. There should be 2 maids waiting outside the door all the time. All the servants in the castle are anxious, Griffith said calmly. Although Lord Norsta has been sent to the depths of the dungeon, he has secretly controlled the castle for a long time. Therefore, not only the black-armored warriors, but also Norsta's trusted subordinates. Therefore, all the servants have to be investigated. The reason was sufficient. However, Yulia didn't believe it at all. Mr. Griffith, I want to see that child body and confirm it. Is that okay? Of course. Griffith smiled faintly and said, That's why I came looking for you. After all, you're the most important guest of the Earl. As the Earl's servant, we have to try our best to satisfy your request. What a beautiful face. If I hadn't seen the boss's smiling face, I would have fallen in love with him. Then I'll have to trouble you. Yulia smiled. She was also extremely beautiful. In a dim and minimalistic room, Madanzo, who was sitting cross-legged on the broken wooden bed, suddenly opened her eyes. A pair of eyes that had lost all their luster and were filled with endless despair. Darkness, helplessness, despair. I can't see any light. Madanzo's voice sounded. What have you experienced here? What are you looking at in front of this window that is less than a foot wide? There was something left here. It could sense the incomparably strong emotions that remained in this place. There was a person who had once shouted silently here for countless days and nights. Chapter 2292. When she woke up, Lily found that she had returned to the library. She was lying on the sofa, covered with a small blanket. She could speak normally now, and she didn't have that indescribable feeling anymore. But Mr. Assakes wasn't here. The sky was completely dark. It was the most suitable time for vampires to move around. Is he in the secret room of the library? Lily subconsciously opened the door of the secret room and came to dig in. The sword that could burn Mr. Assash's hands was still inserted in his body. Who did it? Mr. Assakes said that D should not be dead yet. Maybe as long as I can pull out the sword. D. Could it be Zhu? Please remember the domain name _3. Zhu? Could it be Mr. Luo? She had only experienced 1-page world, and now she was in the 2nd-page world. There were many things that this little maid of the Rose Mansion could not make sense of. It seemed right, but was actually wrong. Even in the last-page world, she was more under the control of Calvin in order to complete the ultimate behemoth. In her half-awake state, she vaguely learned some information from Calvin. The harvest in these strange page worlds seemed to be able to be brought back to the original world. Because of this, Grand Scholar Calvin was so eager to complete the terrible ultimate behemoth. What he became here was likely to be what he would become when he returned. In other words, a terrible idea took shape in Lily's heart. If he could return to the City of Freedom, wouldn't Mr. Assakes be a vampire? Mr. Assakes is already a person who can't pray. If he goes back as a vampire, his final fate will be to be exiled to the land of evil. Even in the City of Freedom, one of the 7 cities that advocated freedom, vampires were heretics that couldn't be accepted. They originally only existed in literature. Exile was Lily's most optimistic, almost delusional idea. In fact, the most likely outcome was probably to be burned at the stake. How could the people of the City of Freedom accept a descendant of a saint family who became a terrible heretic vampire? I can't let Mr. Assakes go back, at least, before he recovers. However, she didn't know if there was a way to recover Mr. Assakes in this world. She didn't know about vampires, and the Holy Light Kingdom wouldn't popularize it. Where did vampires come from? It was a kingdom of the devout. A sudden thought made Lily reach out and grab the sword in front of her. However, a huge force instantly bounced Lily away. Her entire body slammed into the wall behind her in vain. After a long time, Lily finally calmed down. She left the secret room with a defeated expression. When she opened the door of the library, there was only one maid left outside. It was a maid that she had never seen before. The maid lowered her head in the most respectful manner in front of Kay or Lily. Madam Kay or Lily. Madam or something Mr. Essex seemed to have said before that she had the same status as him in the castle. Kay or Lily felt as if she was being held in the palm of his hand. After a slight daze, she asked tentatively, "Where did Mr. Essex go?" "Master is in the main hall. He gathered everyone in the castle." The maid quickly said, "It seems that Mr. Norstad died in the dungeon, so the murderer might still be hiding in the castle." "You?" "Master was worried that Madam Kay or Lily would look for him after you woke up, so he left me here to answer your questions." The maid quickly said, "Madam Kay or Lily, please come with me. I'll take you to the main hall." "Is this Mr. Sash's idea?" "Yes." Kay or Lily was silent for a moment. Looking at the maid's pale skin that was almost the same as the black-armored soldiers, she couldn't help but ask curiously, "You seem to be a little different from the other maids." The maid smiled and said, "Because I'm the direct descendant of Master and a real vampire." DD descendant. The little maid of Rose Mansion instantly widened her eyes and was absent-minded. "Wronged? It means that you've become Master's descendant through the embrace." The maid blinked at this moment. "It's not what Madam Kay or Lily thinks. Also, I heard that vampires have a hard time giving birth. Madam Kay or Lily, you have to work harder." Her face turned red. The little maid of the Rose Mansion hurriedly walked forward. "The main hall. Where's the main hall?" "This way. You're walking in the opposite direction, Madam Kay or Lily." "You? What did you do that?" "I'm talking about the embrace. 15 years ago, when the God-blessed church was defeated. 15 years ago, Mr. Essex, that old scumbag." Kay or Lily couldn't help but be shocked, and said in shock, 15 years ago? Aren't you earlier than Nasta?" "Madam Nasta came here 3 years after I became a vampire," the maid said calmly. Kay or Lily frowned subconsciously and looked at the maid suspiciously. She wasn't sure how much of what the maid said was true, but the maid had no reason to lie because as long as she saw Mr. Essex, her lie would be exposed. "You came earlier than Nasta. But why?" "Madam Kay or Lily, what do you mean? Why could Nasta secretly control the castle for so long? Don't tell me you're also helping Norton?" Lily subconsciously distanced herself from him. "Secretly control?" The maid smiled and said, "Madam Kay or Lily, I'm afraid you've misunderstood something. Master is the ruler of the God-blessed city. Without his permission, there wouldn't be any secret control." "You mean?" Kay or Lily frowned and said, "It's all because of Mr. Essex. I don't really understand the relationship between Master and Madam Nasta." The maid shook her head and said, "There should be a special connection between them. This might be the reason why Master has always allowed Madam Nasta to do whatever she wants. Of course, Madam Nasta's ability to satisfy Master's need for knowledge is also one of the reasons. In my opinion, Madam Nasta should be a very useful tool for Master." Something like that. Kay or Lily said coldly, "But Madam Nasta was punished in the end." "Because he lost his value," the maid said calmly. "No matter if it's Master's permission or Madam Nasta's control, it's just a weak balance. Once the balance is broken, I think it's not that Master didn't want to punish Madam Nasta. Perhaps he just lacked a reason to convince himself." "Why are you telling me this?" Kay or Lily asked expressionlessly. "Because Master said that Madam Kay or Lily, you are equal to him," the maid said slowly. "What if he didn't say this?" Kay or Lily suddenly wanted to know. The maid smiled and a murderous look appeared in her eyes. "Then Madam Kay or Lily, you're asking too much. What's your name?" Kay or Lily asked after taking a deep breath. "Marianne." The hall was quiet, but the atmosphere was bleak. The corpses of more than 10 impostors were placed neatly on the floor. The muscular man, Hercules, was currently being forced to kneel on the floor of the hall by several black-armored warriors with a look of horror on his face. "Lord Count, I truly didn't know anything about this." Arthaces lowered his head and sized up the burly man who was more than twice the size of him. In terms of physique, Arthaces already belonged to the category of tall and sturdy. Hercules was so strong that it was eye-catching. Such a strong man would easily give others the impression that he was reckless, but Arthaces did not think so at the moment. "Last night, you killed many of my subordinates with silver dust bullets," Asax suddenly said. Hercules' expression changed slightly. The fear on his face became even more intense. Asax said indifferently, "Many of my subordinates are actually unhappy that I didn't punish you. Perhaps they're already cursing me behind my back." In the hall, the black-armored warriors broke out in cold sweat. "Damn it, Count, you can't accuse me like that, okay? Anyway, I've moved the things from the stronghold you mentioned back." Mr. Asax chuckled and waved his hand. "I don't lack the manager of the stronghold on the streets of God-blessed city. So, in order to maintain the relationship between me and my subordinates, I can only wrong you, Hercules." Hercules suddenly raised his head. This F***er was obviously pulling the plank after crossing the bridge. "You're hungry, right?" Asax yawned. "If you're hungry, then let's eat. This guy is strong. There should be enough to share." Without saying anything, the black-armored warriors instantly looked at Hercules with murderous gazes. Although it was certain that high-grade ingredients like young men and women would be the most delicious, but it didn't exclude the possibility that there would be people who preferred Hercules. After all, there were still people who liked muscles. A black-armored warrior was the first to step forward. It was a short and skinny guy among the black-armored warriors. He walked in front of Hercules, his eyes filled with a special kind of passion. "Brothers, please turn him around. I like to eat from the back." The short black-armored warrior licked his lips. Actually, if it wasn't for the Count's order, most of the black-armored warriors would rather go to the blood bank and those stored blood bags. Muscles. Not all of them could withstand it. Moreover, it was such a tan man. It was rare that someone would take the initiative to accept this special food. When the black-armored warriors heard this, how could they be slow? Instantly, a few of the black-armored warriors used their great strength and pressed Hercules directly onto the floor. They flipped his body, and someone even considerately tore apart Hercules' clothes. The Rose Count on the throne took out an old, unknown book and lowered his head to read it. He turned a deaf ear. "I won't hold back anymore." The short black-armored warrior grinned maliciously and pressed his entire body against Hercules' back. Sucking blood was a special kind of desire. These black-armored warriors were only half-finished vampires. Their ability to control this kind of special desire was extremely poor. If not for the suppression of high-level vampires, they would only be bloodthirsty monsters. Seeing that he was about to suffer an unprecedented horror, Hercules clenched his teeth, and the muscles on his body swelled a little in an instant. His back muscles, which had been torn apart, were well-defined. They actually looked like a ghost face. F***ck your mother. Several black-armored warriors were instantly bounced away. Under Hercules' swollen muscles, his blood vessels bulged. He was like a human-shaped Tyrannosaurus Rex. He clapped his hands and directly smashed the head of the short, black-armored warrior. This pair of modified metal arms had amazing strength. "Rose Count, you're not a good person either. I'll kill you today." Hercules, who had transformed into a human-shaped Tyrannosaurus Rex, directly rushed towards the stairs leading to the throne like a bull. The maids in the hall were so scared that they turned pale. The black-armored warriors in the hall surged forward. On the throne, the Rose Count was still looking at the ancient book in his hand calmly. Even the strongest human could not defeat a vampire. Hercules did not have any mithril weapons on him. This had been checked, so Asax was not very worried. He was thinking about other things. Who was the one who trained the dozen or so men of sacrifice who pretended to be black-armored warriors to sneak into the castle? "Count! Count, be careful!" Suddenly, there was a cry of alarm. Mr. Arthaces subconsciously frowned. Raising his eyes, he saw that the black-armored warriors had been thrown into disarray by Hercules' charge at this moment. The black-armored warriors were actually unable to resist Hercules' reckless barbarian. In fact, Hercules had already rushed up the stairs. He was holding a black-armored warrior in his hand, as if he was holding a chicken. He was using him as a weapon. His strength is so great. "No, It's not that Hercules' strength is too great. It's that the black-armored warrior's ability has declined. Mr. Asakes could not help but frown. At this time, the black-armored warrior seemed to be faking. Not only was his attack weak, but even his legs seemed to be weak when he walked. Mr. Asakes subconsciously stood up. However, a wave of dizziness forced him to sit down again. At this time, Hercules had already ascended to the throne. You didn't expect it, right? Hercules directly threw down the black-armored warrior in his hand as a weapon. In front of Mr. Asakes, he pinched the metal palm with his fingers. Mr. Asakes was silent for a while. When? Guess. Hercules chuckled and directly grabbed Mr. Asash's collar and lifted him up. If you guess correctly, I won't hit you. Those corpses... Mr. Asash's expression changed slightly. They were smeared with two kinds of potions. That's right. One is used to cover up the smell of humans. As for the other, Hercules smiled and said, it was specially developed to numb the nerves of vampires. You are from the Vatican. Demon Hunter, Hercules. That's me. Chapter 2293. One punch. Mr. Arthas's body flew out in an instant and crashed into the throne. Even with the body of a vampire, one could see the obvious dent on his chest at this moment. No wonder he was called Hercules. Hercules' pair of modified metal arms were like terrifying weapons of mass destruction. He once again walked in front of Mr. Arthashes and reached out to grab Mr. Arthashes' head. An upper-level vampire noble is nothing more than this. The man with the ghost-like back muscles punched Mr. Asakes again and again. There's still a long time before dawn. You have to hold on. Below the throne, a group of powerless black-armored soldiers looked at this scene in horror. They didn't even have the ability to get up. The colorless and odorless poisonous gas in the air had almost deprived them of the physical strength they were proud of. As ordinary servants, they weren't affected at all. But these ordinary servants didn't dare to make a move in this situation. Their loyalty was only based on the terrifying power of vampires. Perhaps there was a touch of satisfaction in the eyes of the servants at this moment. Finally, Hercules stopped swinging his fists. Mr. Arthasheth collapsed under the throne like a pile of mud. But Hercules didn't seem to be satisfied. At this moment, the door of the hall opened. A handsome young man in golden armor slowly walked in. Beside the young knight, two teams of fully armed soldiers rushed into the hall at the same time. Seeing this, Hercules let go of his hand and threw Mr. Asakes, who had just been lifted up, down the stairs. The ruler of the city of God now rolled down awkwardly until he stopped. You're early. Hercules on the throne sneered and walked down step by step. An upper-level vampire noble is nothing more than this. The young knight sized up Rose Earl, who was lying on the ground, and then looked at Hercules. He didn't say anything, but instead, he moved aside. Behind him, a lady slowly walked over. The lady was wearing a light armor and looked valiant. Miss Isabel, Hercules shouted proudly. He was proud of himself. As the last batch of demon hunters in the pure land of humans, Laputa, he broke into the city of God, which was full of dangers, and finally defeated Rose Earl's vampire group. He had become a legend. As for the means of the winner were naturally the best. The lady looked at Hercules expressionlessly and nodded. Then, she pointed at Rose Earl, who was lying on the ground. Hercules understood and grinned hideously as he dragged Rose Earl until he was in front of the woman. Once again, Hercules grabbed Mr. Asash's head and lifted him up in front of the woman. Asakes, the lady called in a low voice. Mr. Asash's eyelids twitched a few times. When he saw the lady in front of him, his expression seemed to freeze. It's you, the lady said calmly. Can I come? Mr. Asakes smiled bitterly and said, I thought it would be someone else. After all, you don't look like someone who likes violence. You don't know me. The lady, Isabel, shook her head. She suddenly looked around. The people she brought with her were the elites of the God-blessed church. Their weapons were the most advanced, but they didn't seem to be useful. It was true that humans couldn't fight vampires head-on. However, their wisdom and technology could. Only their wisdom and technology were limitless. "Assakes, I don't want to fight with you." Isabel stayed silent for a while and said, "You can only blame yourself for becoming the ruler of the city of God blessed. You shouldn't be in the limelight." "What's your purpose?" Mr. Assakes asked absent-mindedly. His expression was gloomy, as if he had been struck down from the clouds in an instant, and was at a loss as to what to do. "I'm looking for something," Isabel said calmly. Then she waved her hand and said, "Bring him back to La Puta. He will be the most important trophy of the new holy church. He will be like the bodies of the heroes who were stabbed in the square outside. He will be stabbed in front of the gate of La Puta." Everyone cheered and raised their arms. This was the first battle that humans fought back against the vampires. It was a perfect victory. The morale was high. Rose Earl heaved a sigh of relief. While being dragged away, he walked past Isabel. He said in a low voice, "Have you really understood me?" Isabel frowned subconsciously and turned around. The moment she turned around, she saw the two elite warriors of the Holy Church who were dragging Assakes were beheaded instantly. Their blood splattered on Isabel's light armor. "Watch out!" The young and handsome golden-armored knight pulled Isabel behind him in an instant. Everyone was terrified. Blood spurted out from the wounds of the two elite warriors of the Holy Church. Assakes raised his head and bathed in the rain of blood. However, the blood couldn't stain his body. "You're not poisoned?" Hercules was shocked. "You people of the Holy Church are not the only ones who know how to write the word progress." Mr. Arthesis slowly swept his gaze over. "Or should I say, you guys haven't made any progress at all. After so many years, what you can bring out now is only the half-finished product from back then." With a cold smile, Mr. Assakes opened his palm. The blood that spurted out gathered into a blood ball in his palm. From the blood ball, he pulled out a bright red blood blade. "I've been waiting for you, Isabel. F***CKU." The demon hunter, Hercules, couldn't help but roar. He felt that his face was burning, and the muscles on his back were all exposed. This muscular man had turned into a weapon. He jumped high, closed his arms, and hammered down. "Among so many upper-class nobles, I should be the weakest." Mr. Assakes waved the blood blade in his hand and said, "But I'm still a little stronger than you." A blood-red light flashed by, and Hercules was sent flying. His metal arms were almost cut off. Two huge gaps appeared. Although his metal arms weren't broken, they were completely useless. Before he landed on the ground, he heard a loud explosion. A palm was placed on his back, catching him. However, the person who caught him was also Assakes. "You?" Hercules gasped, and his eyes lit up. "I'm not interested in torturing my opponents." "So be it," Mr. Assakes said calmly. With the strength of his palm, Hercules' spine was broken. Hercules' eyes turned white, and he lost consciousness. He fell down like a pile of mud. At the same time, the sound of a sword being drawn was heard. "For glory!" The young knight in golden armor raised the mithril weapon in his hand high. A group of elites from God Bless Church shielded Isabel behind them. They had seen the power of the upper-class vampire nobles. Even a powerful demon hunter like Hercules was defeated so easily. Seeing the elite warriors of the church raise the special weapons in their hands one after another, Arthesis furrowed his brows slightly. Close combat mithril weapons were not of much use to him, but shooting-type weapons were a little troublesome. Although the vampires were powerful, they weren't as powerful as the ancestors. They couldn't do whatever they wanted. A dash! A blood-curdling scream rang out all of a sudden. Then, a strange scene appeared. An elite warrior of the Holy See had a horrified expression on his face at this moment. His neck was twisting crazily at this moment. A pair of shadowy palms were strangling his neck. The shadow-like hands came from his own shadow. Crack! The warrior's neck was twisted and broken. All of the warriors sucked in a breath of cold air. Their shadows were also stirring at this moment. The young and handsome knight Nero's eyes flashed as he stabbed his own shadow with his mithril sword. However, most of the soldiers who failed to react in time lost their lives in the hands of the restless shadows. The young knight, Nero, gritted his teeth. Silver dust bullet. A silver light flashed, and countless silver stars fell. A black shadow quickly moved stealthily on the floor, stopping only when it reached Arthas's side. The black shadow on the floor floated up slowly. It was a beautiful woman in a maid costume. "Master!" Mr. Asakes glanced at her casually and nodded. Morian, this surprised soldier, had a pretty good battle record. She had eliminated nearly a third of the enemy's combat strength in an instant. "She's your descendant?" Isabel, who was protected at the back, had an incredulous look on her face. "You gave her the embrace? You seem surprised." Asakes looked at Isabel in confusion. She shouldn't be so surprised. She didn't believe that he would give her the embrace, or did she mean something else? Asakes pondered. He had a bad relationship with Isabel, so it was hard for him to kill her. Both of their families were saint families in the Free City. One was the saint's mother's family, and the other was the saint's father's family. Although Asash's family had declined, and he was the only one left, the relationship between the two families was still there. "It seems that you've accepted your current identity." Isabel looked at Asakes deeply. "Since that's the case, then I don't have to. There's nothing to say." Mr. Asakes immediately interrupted her. "Today, you won't be able to leave the city of God blessing. You have to give me an answer to what happened 15 years ago." Isabel's face turned cold. She said coldly, "Nero, purify this demon." The young Nero was filled with murderous intent. He suddenly sped up. Marian saw this and sneered. Maybe she was disdainful. How could a human compete with a vampire in terms of speed? "Master, I'll be back soon." After that, Marianne's figure flashed out. In a secret place in the hall, Lily held her breath and stared at the situation in the hall. When Marianne suddenly attacked, Lily couldn't help but feel a sense of familiarity. Marianne seemed to be a mismaid. She gave off a very reliable feeling. Lily couldn't help but think of another mismaid she met, Miss Yi. She was the most perfect woman she had ever met. Omnipotent. It was the same for Jasmine. While she was lost in thought, she heard a painful groan. It seemed that there was a result. Lily couldn't help but widen her eyes. The one who retreated with injuries was actually Marianne. Well, not every mismaid was the same. Marianne was really injured. On her shoulder, there was a deep wound that exposed her bone. It was being corroded by some kind of power, the power of mithril. She retreated to Asash's side. Facing the young knight Nero who injured her so easily, she couldn't help but feel shocked. It was even more painful than the wound. How can a human have such speed? The young knight, Nero, had a calm expression, but his eyes shone with a demonic blood-red light. Mr. Asash's was shocked by Nero's gaze. "Mixed blood." Asakes frowned as he looked at Isabel. His voice deepened. "Isabel, haven't you guessed it already?" Isabel said calmly, "In this world, isn't the only one who can master this power. He's much weaker than D." Asakes snorted lightly. The young knight Nero charged at Marianne at this moment. His speed was so fast that Marianne couldn't even react. The light of his mithril sword flashed. In an instant, Arthasis made his move, and the bloodblade met the attack. The thunderous, bloody light hit the surrounding crazily as the two of them fought. It seemed that they were on par with each other. The two of them separated instantly. Asash's expression was uncertain. The young knight Nero had already revealed his blood-sucking fangs. At this moment, a great sense of crisis rose in Asash's heart. Out of instinct, he retreated and grabbed Marianne's arm directly. At the same time, a horrifying light hit the original building of the God-blessed church. Boom! The ground shook, and everything was destroyed at this moment. The Great Hall. The dome of the Great Hall had completely disappeared, and more than half of the Great Hall had been erased, leaving behind only a deep crater. In the night sky, a huge spaceship that kept spewing out steam was currently slowly descending. In the ruined main hall, the young knight Nero walked out of the ruins. The mutation on his body faded away bit by bit. He returned to Isabel, who looked calm, and said suddenly, "I can defeat him." "I believe you can," Isabel said calmly, "but it's faster this way." "But Nero, there's more than one Rose Earl, in this world. Without you, I can't fight against the other vampires and the true ancestor. Nero didn't say anything and returned to Isabel silently. I hope I can find that thing. Isabel heaved a sigh of relief. She looked at the huge spaceship in the sky and murmured, "Otherwise, the loss of this cannon can't be recovered." Of course, the cost of such a powerful weapon was enormous. With Laputa's current resources, it could not support too many shots. Even when the God Bless Vatican was at its peak, they still had to use this kind of cannon carefully. Otherwise, 15 years ago, the God Bless Church wouldn't have been defeated by the true ancestor of the vampires and had to retreat from Laputa. The vibration caused by the huge cannon spread to the depths of the castle. In the secret room hidden under the library, the vibration seemed to be absorbed by a special material and suddenly stopped. On the stone platform, whose chest was pierced by the sword, slowly opened his eyes. But soon he closed his eyes again. Beside the stone platform, a figure slowly walked out of the distorted space. He looked at D on the stone platform and seemed to be lost in thought. He seemed to be murmuring, "It seems that I'm not in a good situation here." He reached out his hand, and the page that represented this page world slowly condensed in his palm. He lowered his head and began to read. It's about the War of Universal. Chapter 2294. Water flowed down from the cracked rock stratum. The ground was soaked. Kalili didn't know where she was at the moment. She just followed behind Mr. Arthas. Subconsciously, things were a little bad. The sudden cannon had sent them into this place where they couldn't see the light of day. The maid Marianne was seriously injured. The beautiful maid's back was almost completely blown up, and her flesh was badly mutilated. The skin on her back was trying hard to heal, but it was constantly tearing as it healed. It seemed that there was a strange ability that was crazily preventing the wound from healing itself. "Boss, is that really Ms. Isabel?" As a maid of the Rose Mansion, she knew a lot about the two Saint families. Naturally, she knew Lady Isabel. At least, Mr. Assakes and Mr. Ludick would always mention this name when they were chatting. "You're right. It's indeed the one you know." At this time, Mr. Arthas was carrying the heavily injured Marion on his back. He sighed and said, "She came to this world with me before God Bless the Church was defeated. But why would Ms. Isabel?" This was a situation that Kay or Lily couldn't accept for the time being. They were actually enemies here. There's nothing strange about it. Mr. Arthas shook his head and said, "I became a vampire and she joined the God Bless Church. The two sides have been opposing each other since ancient times. What's worse is that I didn't have a choice, but she chose herself." Assakes really didn't have a choice to become a vampire. He fell into an ancient castle at the beginning, and then the vampires in the castle gave him the embrace. Isabel came later, but it was also half a year after he became a vampire. Isabel's arrival was also the time when God Bless Church sent the strongest vampire hunter D to suppress the vampires in the castle. After that, Mr. Assakes was brought back to the headquarters of God Bless Church as a subject for research. But within a few days, God Bless Church was attacked by the vampire's true ancestor. After a series of changes, the current situation became what it was today. He briefly told Kay or Lily what happened, but he didn't mention that he saw Isabel holding the sword that pierced his body, because he wasn't sure if it was Isabel who pierced his body or she was just trying to pull out the sword, and it was someone else who pierced his body. At that time, Isabel did not explain anything. After a huge fire, Asashis disappeared without a trace. At that time, I wanted to take advantage of the chaos to sneak into the church's library and find out something. Mr. Assakes recalled and said, but I don't know why I suddenly fainted. When I woke up, the airships of the nobles of God Bless Church and God Bless City were everywhere. They had already started to flee like crazy. What was even more unbelievable was that when I woke up, I was lying next to the body of the previous pope of God Bless Church. Boss, you killed the previous pope. Kate or Lily's voice trembled. Mr. Ashe said, I also want to know, but I don't have any memories of that period. However, it's clear that the true ancestor of the vampires believes that the previous pope died in my hands, and I became the ruler of the city of God because of this contribution. Of course, I know this is unbelievable. Even I believe you. The girl's voice was firm and powerful. Mr. Asakes froze for a moment. After being absent-minded for a moment, he slowly exhaled and turned to look at the surroundings. This is still deep underground where the church's headquarters used to be. I didn't expect such a secret place to be hidden in the church's headquarters. Boss, you've been here for so many years, but you didn't find anything? Mr. Asakes shook his head and said, I did an in-depth investigation, but I didn't find anything like a secret passage. Except for the secret room in the library, I found many secret rooms of different sizes and found many things. But so deep underground, I didn't expect to find anything. Where does this lead to? It's better than staying up there and being killed by others. Mr. Arthashes laughed bitterly. I really didn't expect that the God-blessed church would really succeed in cultivating a mixed blood. That knight named Nero, you've seen D. Mr. Asakes nodded. He's the only human who can have the power of a vampire. But D doesn't seem to be a vampire in nature. There are many doubts about the source of his power. I heard that it was because he was cursed by the first generation of vampires. God-blessed church has been trying to get this strange power, and what they thought of was a mixed blood. A mixed blood? Could be? You're right. It's the offspring between humans and vampires. Mr. Asakes nodded. I saw many cruel experiments in this area from the information I found later. The church has always captured vampires and used them to mate with humans to get mixed blood. Even I was on the list of experiments at that time. But the attack of the vampire's true ancestor came too quickly, and I was able to avoid this disaster. Otherwise, I would have become a breeding pig now. However, the rate of mixed blood dying is very high, and the experiments haven't been successful over the years. Later, when God-blessed church left, they took away the last batch of mixed blood children. Now it seems that Nero should be one of the mixed bloods that were taken away at that time. I just don't know how many of such mixed bloods there are in the God-blessed church today. Over the years, has the Holy Church continued this project? Boss, there seems to be light in front. There's someone else. Mr. Asakes nodded, and his expression became more serious. He said slowly, and he's an acquaintance of yours. Kay Forehead Lily was stunned, and she looked forward subconsciously. A flame came, and a figure slowly walked out with a torch in his hand. It was the owner of the dungeon, Mr. Allen. Earl Allen. The owner of the dungeon. Allen's voice was full of surprise after surviving a disaster. He wasn't in good condition. Blood was flowing from his left shoulder, and his luxurious aristocratic clothes were damaged in many places. You also fell here? Mr. Asakes asked without batting an eyelid. I'm in the room, waiting for you to summon me. Allen nodded. I didn't expect the disaster to happen so suddenly. I was shocked and fell into a coma. When I woke up, I was already in this place. It seems to be a secret space that existed before. There are many traces of man-made excavation here. Maybe it was opened by the former God-blessed church. What else did you find? Mr. Asakes asked again. There's a complete road ahead. Allen thought and said, but I heard the movement here, so I didn't have time. Let's go and see. Mr. Asakes said directly. Execution. The warriors in black armor were being sent to the square by the soldiers of the Holy See from the airship and executed. On the mountain where the headquarters of the Holy See was located, many survivors of the God-blessed city came. They looked at the horrifying warriors in black armor and screamed in despair as they were brutally killed one by one. It was hard to describe how they felt at this moment. They just didn't know what to do as they watched this happen. On one of the viewing platforms, the valiant Isabel watched the execution without any expression on her face. She wasn't unfamiliar with executions. In the past few years, many people had been executed in La Puta. She was used to this kind of screaming scene. Ms. Isabel, we found a secret room in the library. There are some things inside. The young knight, Nero, came to her side. She said calmly, I heard that the Rose Earl locked himself in the library most of the time. There are some things inside. As expected. Take me to see it. All these years, Nero was a little surprised. MS. Isabel has been paying attention to the movements in the God-blessed city? He didn't ask further. In the secret room of the library, more than a dozen elite warriors of the church surrounded the only stone platform. They looked at the man lying on the stone platform with a sword impaled in his body with shock and bewilderment. The sword was a powerful mithril weapon. Even in Laputa, they had never seen this kind of weapon before. Isabel had been here for some time. She silently observed the man, who seemed to be sleeping on the stone platform. Nero had been with her all this time. Instinctively, Nero felt that Ms. Isabel seemed to have some special feelings for this man on the stone platform. "Nero, do you know who he is?" Isabel suddenly asked in a low voice. Nero shook his head and thought for a while before saying, "But since the Rose Earl kept him here, he should be a very important person, right? I don't know why, but when I get close to him, I have an indescribable feeling." "It's intimacy," Isabel said coldly. Nero was a little surprised. He thought of a possibility and said subconsciously, "Could it be that this man is also a mixed blood?" "He's not a mixed blood," Isabel said calmly, "but you were born because of him." Nero took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "He is the most powerful vampire hunter in the legends." "That's right. He is Nero said in disbelief. "How can he?" He didn't answer directly. At this moment, Isabel reached out her hand and touched the sword on his body. She didn't hold it firmly. She just held it lightly and said slowly, "This is this special weapon. In the history of the Holy See, this is the only mithril sword that was successfully created." Nero's eyes lit up. Subconsciously, he reached out his hand and tried to grab this mithril sword. Isabel didn't stop him. When Nero finally grabbed the sword hilt, he retracted his hand as fast as lightning. He looked at his palm subconsciously. His palm had already been burned and was completely red. This sword, the young knight was surprised. The power of this sword came from the ancestor of the first generation of vampires. Isabel said calmly, "The Holy See used a special method to create this sword. All this time, only D could control it. Some people guessed that maybe mixed blood could control it, but it seems that it's not possible." After a moment of silence, Nero shook his head and said, "It's just a sword. It won't affect the battle much. As long as we can find the lost, universal, or mother, we will have a weapon that is 100 times more powerful than this sword. You guys go out first," Isabel said coldly. "Search the secret room according to the map that I gave you. Look for clues about the universal or mother. I'll stay here alone for a while." Nero hesitated for a moment and nodded in the end. In the secret room of the library, Isabel sat by the stone platform alone. She didn't touch the sword. Instead, she reached out and touched his face. "Why? You don't have the deadly charm that you had in the free cities," the woman murmured to herself. "But even so, you still make me want to get it." Suddenly, Isabel stood up and stretched out her hand, directly grabbing the hilt of the treasured sword. There was no strange movement, and she was not even injured because of it. She wanted to pull out the sword, but she couldn't move it at all. After a long time, Isabel let go of her hands as if she was exhausted. "I still can't pull it out." She was lucky enough to escape this disaster. Yulia looked at the palace that was destroyed by the airship in the sky. Even a shock wave of the airship's attack had pushed down many buildings. She and Griffith were heading to the place where the corpses were buried, but they were stopped by this huge cannon. It took Griffith a great deal of effort to bring her out of the collapsed corridor. The screams of the black-armored warriors came one after another, and Griffith's face was a bit gloomy. "Oh, who are these people?" Yulia asked in a trembling voice. "With such weapons and power," Griffith said in a low voice, "I'm afraid they are from Laputa, the God-blessed church. After 15 years, are they going to make a comeback?" "I don't know how the Earl is now." Griffith thought for a moment and said, "The power of that huge cannon is too horrible. I'm afraid even the Earl." While speaking, Griffith looked at Yulia with flickering eyes. Yulia shrunk her body subconsciously and looked at the extremely beautiful black-armored warrior captain anxiously. Griffith suddenly showed a comforting smile and said, "But don't worry. I believe the Earl will be fine. Ms. Yulia, you are the Earl's most important guest. I will protect you." What I have it this guy wants. Yulia still nodded nervously and even grabbed the black-armored warrior's arm in fear. I'm too familiar with this kind of greedy look. The God-blessed church is back. With this kind of attack, the surrounding cities will definitely notice it. Griffith said quickly, I think the vampire court's army will be here soon. Right now, the church only sent an airship. This operation is very likely to be evacuated soon. Perhaps this is just a probing attack. Master Griffith, why don't we leave this place first? Yulia said faintly. The airship is checking above. At this time, no matter where we leave, we will be in danger of being discovered. Griffith shook his head and said, Instead, it is safer here. This is called darkness under the light. As long as we can wait for reinforcement from the court, they will immediately evacuate. Let's go. I know a more secret place. UF*Ker. You want to fish in troubled waters? Hashtag PS1. That's right. It's been a while since we last met. PS2. Thank you all for giving Miss Yuye's birthday gifts, especially Elder Wudong's silver. It's too much, it's going to be full soon. PS3. 0/11. Chapter 2295. When Nero saw Isabel again, the latter had already walked out of the secret room in the library. However, there were still a couple of Holy See soldiers guarding the door of the secret room. What's the result of the search? Isabel asked in a deep voice. We followed the markings on the map you gave us and opened the secret rooms one by one. Nero shook her head and said, Some of these secret rooms have already been opened, and some of them haven't. However, we didn't find anything. Isabel frowned. Nero continued. However, we found a gap in the deep pit where the main cannon hit. We sent people down to investigate and found some new footprints. There's a huge hidden space deep underground. I'm afraid that Rose Earl is still alive. Hidden space underground? There are signs of someone opening the gate. Isabel tapped her finger on the table as she was thinking. The God-blessed church on La Puta was formed by the defeated soldiers of the Holy See. In the war 15 years ago, almost all of the elites of the former God-blessed church were killed. Even a former pope died in that war. Therefore, many of the secrets of the God-blessed church became secrets that no one knew the answer to after the death of the previous pope, including the location of the myriad element mother, which was the most important item in the God-blessed church. As for the current La Puta as Pope Elohim, he only became the new pope after the La Puta reorganized the Holy See. Of course, Elohim's position in the Holy See was not low. He was even one of the few people who had real power after the former pope. At the same time, Elohim was also the person in charge of the hybrid project. He belonged to the pro-war faction of the Holy See, and he even wanted to control the taboo power of the hybrids. Isabel looked at Nero coldly, and this young knight was a bit confused. Isabel didn't say anything. She only thought about Nero's growth and the death of the conservative faction of the new Holy See in La Puta. Get ready. I'm going down, Isabel said quickly. Isabel quickly said, We don't have much time. I believe the commotion in the city of God's protection will attract the attention of the vampire palace soon. Nero nodded quickly. He also understood that with his current combat strength, if he were to encounter the army of the Royal Court of Vampires, there was only the possibility of being annihilated. Vampires could see easily even in the dark. At this time, Arthashis could easily see everything in front of him. The further they went, the more obvious the traces of manual opening became. In the end, they even stepped on the flat floor. It was a passageway with no end in sight. If it's safe to leave this place, I'll give you what you want, Alan. In the quiet atmosphere, Asash's voice suddenly rang out. This caused Mr. Allen, who had been silent most of the time, to have some obvious ups and downs in his emotions. At the very least, Mr. Asakes could hear the guy's heartbeat speeding up a little. If this passageway can lead to the outside, I'm confident that I can help you escape the Holy See's pursuit, Count. Mr. Allen seemed to have become excited. I've been operating in the city of God Bless for so many years. It's not in vain. I don't doubt it. Mr. Asakes chuckled softly. He was more concerned about when Isabel's men would appear. There seemed to be some symbols here. K.R. Lily held a torch and stood in front of the wall of the passageway. Look at this mark. I seem to have seen this mark somewhere. Mr. Asakes looked at it and said, in the information of the Holy See, many documents are classified as top secret. This seems to be some kind of top secret mark, but I've never seen any information with the same mark. Maybe it's not important, or maybe it's the most important. Alan said coldly, judging from the secrecy of this place, it can only be the latter. This place might be related to universal essence. Asakes suddenly looked at Alan. The expression of the owner of the dungeon slightly changed, and his breathing couldn't help but quicken. He was currently being troubled by the corrosion of 10,000 element. The most important thing was obviously information on 10,000 element and whether or not he could survive. My Lord Count, you mean? I know something about universal essence. Asakes shook his head and said, but it's very little. It's just some marginal information. It was privately recorded by a researcher in the Holy See in his diary. What exactly is universal essence? Asakes said, an energy source similar to a perpetual motion machine. According to the description in the researcher's diary, universal essence can transform any substance. No, perhaps it is created out of thin air, to be more precise. Created out of thin air? Alan frowned subconsciously and said, don't you need raw materials? I'm afraid there's no need. Mr. Arthursis thought for a while and said, this kind of myriad elements seems to be able to refine something out of a fantasy through some kind of method, creating something out of nothing. However, there is a restriction, and that is, the thing that can be refined must be something within one's knowledge. Something within cognition? Alan was stunned. What exactly do you mean? When it comes to knowledge, we should be limitless. We are constantly improving our knowledge of ourselves. Could it be that this substance can also be infinitely improved? In theory, that's the case. Mr. Asakes said slowly, it's a very inconceivable and absurd delusion. But obviously, the Holy See was indeed doing research in this area in the past, and it seems that they really came up with something. Alan lowered his head and said, I've come into contact with universal essence, and the corrosion on my body is the best proof. But universal essence was once in my hands, so it obviously doesn't have the fantasy ability you mentioned. Perhaps you opened it the wrong way. Mr. Asakes shrugged. This reason, Mr. Allen realized that he actually had no way to refute it. Could it be that the Holy See's return this time is for universal essence? Allen seemed to have understood something, and his voice was alarmed. Basically, when the Holy See retreated, they took away what they could take away and destroyed as much as possible what they couldn't take away. Mr. Asakes said, logically speaking, if it's universal essence, it should be the highest priority. It's impossible for them not to take it away back then. Alan pondered for a moment. There was no problem with this inference. What if there's a reason why they can't take it away? However, he thought of another possibility. Mr. Asakes muttered, let's continue walking, and we'll find out. Alan nodded. He was more concerned about his own safety. By the way, Lord Earl, in your opinion, when will the army of the Vampire Court arrive? What army of the Vampire Court? Alan hesitated and said, Lord Earl, please don't joke around. Didn't you contact the court when God Bless City was attacked? Moreover, even if you didn't take the initiative to contact them, the court wouldn't just ignore you, right? After all, you were the hero who killed the previous pope of God Bless Church, Cicero. Mr. Asakes frowned. Whether the previous pope Cicero was really killed by him, he himself didn't know. Maybe they're already on their way here. He thought for a moment and said, in fact, other than the battle 15 years ago, he had never been to the royal court of the vampires. In these 15 years, he had not contacted the royal court of the vampires even once. As for the vampire true ancestor who broke through God Bless City, he had never seen him before. How did he become the new ruler of God Bless City? So it's you who killed the Pope Cicero. You're the hero of my race. The true ancestor said that God Bless City is yours. Do your best. That's probably it. A group of vampires ran over and said while looking at the confused Alan, am I not the child of the realm? All the black-armored warriors in the castle were captured, and the human servants in the castle were also imprisoned in one place. The surroundings were very quiet. Griffith brought Yulia with him, quickly traversing through the castle, avoiding some of the church's warriors who were carrying out their search. After a while, Griffith opened one of the walls, and there was a mezzanine space inside. Griffith skillfully took an oil lamp from the wall of the mezzanine and lit it up. Although it was called a mezzanine, it was basically made up of stairs that went up and down. Through this secret mezzanine, it seemed like it could lead to anywhere in the castle. It just leads to a few fixed places. As if he saw through Yulia's thoughts, Griffith said calmly, "In terms of structure, if the entire castle has this mezzanine, it's easy to be discovered. However, it's safe here for now." Yulia showed a pitiful expression. However, Griffith wasn't moved and walked down with the oil lamp. Yulia had no choice but to follow him. After a while, Griffith opened the wall of the mezzanine again and walked out. "What is this place?" Yulia was surprised. This peculiar place was actually filled with densely packed containers. Shockingly, the organs of various creatures were soaking in these containers. It seemed to be a biological laboratory. The laboratory wasn't small, and there were many containers, but it wasn't crowded. In the center of the laboratory, there were some rusty instruments and a bed made of metal, the kind that was welded with shackles and shackles. The bricks on the ground showed a reddish-brown color. It was a thick layer of solidified blood, like a hard shell. This is the place where the God-blessed church used to do biological experiments, Griffith said calmly. After the Earl took over the castle, he found this place and then sealed it. The door outside has been sealed, but we can come in through the secret passage. Yulia was stunned. Since there's a door, why did they build a secret passage? Who knows what the people of the church thought back then? Griffith shook his head. Maybe some people didn't want to come in openly, or they wanted to secretly take something out from here. This is a specimen of a vampire's corpse. In a round container that was as tall as two people, Yulia saw a male vampire's corpse. With her knowledge, she could easily see that all the organs of this vampire's corpse had been removed, not only the vampire's corpse, but she also saw many baby specimens in the containers. These babies seemed to be born with deformities and horrible shapes. "I don't like this place." Yulia clasped her hands and said, "Master Griffith, didn't you say that the secret passage can lead to other places? Should we leave this place?" Useless, cowardly woman. This was Griffith's evaluation, but in this environment, Yulia's reaction was normal. If she didn't move, he could only suspect her origin. But the reality was different. This woman had once resisted her curiosity and turned a blind eye to the opening of the prison door. She had turned around and left without hesitation. The other places are the library and the Pope's Hall that used to be the God-blessed church. There's also a path, but it has collapsed. I don't know where it leads to. Now, the library and the Pope's Hall are guarded by the soldiers of the church. Do you really want to go there? Let's stay here," Yulia said with a trembling voice. Griffith suddenly chuckled. "Miss Yulia, don't you have any thoughts about this secret passage?" Thoughts? The smile in Griffith's eyes became bigger. "Yes, thoughts in your heart." Yulia swallowed and said, What thoughts can I have? Like I said, this secret passage is connected to the library." Griffith walked closer. "Aren't you curious how I know about the existence of this secret passage? Or, to go deeper, have I ever used this secret passage to spy on Countess Rose, who has been hiding in the library all this time? Mr. Griffith, you are the Earl's loyal subordinate. How could you do such a thing?" Yulia said quickly, "The Earl must have told you about this secret passage, right? What secrets do you have?" Griffith said with a playful expression. "Mr. Griffith, what were you talking about?" Yulia stepped back subconsciously. Griffith chuckled and said, "During the selection competition, Nord pointed out that you were the winner and took you away. Before Nord died, he wanted me to bring you to him. At the same time, you became Earl Rose's VIP guest. Without a doubt, you are just an ordinary person. Although you are pretty, it isn't enough to make you special. Those marks, were you the one who left them?" Yulia couldn't help but frown. Her expression changed instantly. "Norsta, why are you here?" Griffith subconsciously looked away. By the time he reacted, Yulia had already rushed to the entrance of the secret passage. Griffith narrowed his eyes. As a vampire, his speed was much faster than that of a normal human. He had already blocked Yulia's path. Yulia kicked out without saying anything. However, Griffith easily grabbed her ankle and threw her against the wall. Your strength is not bad, but it's a pity that your foundation is too low. Griffith walked up to the injured Yulia and looked at her coldly. He was about to say something when Yulia suddenly stopped in front of him. Unexpectedly, Yulia said, "I'll tell you their secret. Please let me go." "Really? I can tell you now?" Griffith opened his mouth slightly. He thought that it would take some effort. He didn't expect the other party to give in so quickly. Moreover, his intuition told him that this woman was the type that was afraid of death. "Oh," Griffith smiled playfully again. "Tell me about it." "Actually, Nord isn't from this world," Yulia said slowly. "Even Earl Rose isn't from this world. They came from the same place and knew each other a long time ago." Griffith narrowed his eyes. "Continue." His intuition told him that this woman's words were true. She wasn't lying. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS. 1/11th, end of chapter. Chapter 2296. In the dusty biology lab, Griffith was very interested in the other world that Yulia mentioned. He couldn't wait to know more. What kind of world is that? Yulia got a chance to breathe. She opened her mouth and said, "Living in such a barren world, you can never imagine the beauty of that place. There are no wars there, and the resources are abundant. All the races live in harmony. The people living there are active, passionate, and cheerful. Children can grow up in the way they like, and adults won't have a moment of collapse." "Impossible," Griffith sneered. "There's no such place in this world. That's why I said that it's another world, the other world that people know." Yulia said seriously, "Don't use your shallow knowledge to try to understand the truth that you can't understand, but it really exists." The woman in front of him said with certainty, and Griffith couldn't help but feel suspicious. "Why should I believe you?" Griffith shook his head. "I can't prove it," Yulia said indifferently, "because this is a secret that only exists between Nasta, Asakes, and me. We come from the same place. It's a free country that you've never seen before." Griffith said indifferently, "Is that so? Since it's such a beautiful world, why did you come here?" Yulia opened her mouth, but didn't say anything. In the end, she stammered, "Of course, because something happened." In an instant, Yulia felt suffocated. Griffith's pale hand had already grabbed her neck. She could even feel that the fragile bones in her neck would break at any time. Yulia struggled in pain and frantically slapped Griffith's chest. However, this kind of struggle was nothing more than a tickle to Griffith, who had a strong body. Griffith slowly raised Yulia. "Why did Nasta come to you? What secrets do you have between you?" I didn't lie to you. It's true. What I said is all true." Griffith sneered and increased his strength again. Yulia's face turned green. Her legs kicked in the air. "Door. There's a door. A door that connects two worlds. Door. Door. Door." Griffith was silent. He had almost reached the limit of his control. If he increased his strength a little more, he could crush the woman's throat. Even if he didn't move, the woman would die of suffocation after a while. Time ticked by. Griffith didn't increase his strength, but under the suffocation, his eyeballs started to bulge. Griffith frowned and suddenly loosened his grip. Yulia instantly fell to the ground. She was powerless. She was drooling in pain. She used her mouth and nose to breathe and cough. She really had a close brush with death. Griffith lifted his leg. Yulia moved back in fear. She hugged her body and curled up. Trembling, she said, "I didn't lie to you. I didn't." Griffith squatted down and thought for a while. "Is it the door of the shadow?" Yulia was still trembling in fear. "I don't know. Nasta, Asakes, and I are all adventurous. We found that door in an ancient relic. Nasta, he accidentally triggered it. The door opened and sucked us in. The time doesn't match. You're just a normal human. Nasta and Rose Countess appeared at least 15 years ago. But you're not old. I, I don't know why. Yulia shook her head. The time between the two worlds is not equal. I was only a few steps late when I was sucked in by the door, but I am already so far behind Nasta and, ass sakes, Griffith was silent. Where's that door? He suddenly asked. It disappeared. Yulia smiled bitterly. At least, when I woke up, I didn't see it. I'm afraid we were randomly teleported. During the selection, Nasta recognized me and took me away as the winner. After we briefly discussed our situation, we were attacked by Hercules and Mr. Allen before we could talk about it in detail. You know what happened after that? Griffith furrowed his brows. Yulia said hesitantly. Nasta was locked up by ass sakes. I know ass sakes is really angry, but he won't really kill Nasta. Because they and I are good friends. Ass sakes is just angry. I will persuade him to release Nasta. No matter what you say, in this place, only the three of us are true companions. Nasta is already dead, Griffith said suddenly. Yulia's face paled. She opened her mouth, and in the silence, a tear fell from the corner of her left eye. Lowering her head, Yulia subconsciously wiped the tear stains on her face. She lightly covered her mouth, as if all the strength in her body had been sucked out. How did he die? The Count killed him with his own hands, Griffith said calmly. Impossible. Yulia suddenly shouted in agitation. You lied to me. Asakes definitely wouldn't do that. They are blood brothers. How could he? They are blood brothers? Griffith was startled. Do you think I'll be imprisoned here forever? You don't understand. No one understands the relationship between Asakes and me. He won't really kill me. Think about it. Why did I gain his trust after all these years? I know a secret about him. Because of this secret, he won't kill me. I'll regain everything sooner or later. No one would understand that the relationship between Nasta and Arthaces was a secret. If what this woman said was true, it seemed explainable. Don't worry, Nasta isn't dead. But at this time, Griffith said calmly, I lied to you. I just wanted to see your reaction. You acted well. I almost believed you. Yulia turned and stared at Griffith angrily. She looked like a female leopard that would have pounced on him if not for the fact that she couldn't defeat him. Besides, it was he who asked me to lead you to the dungeon, Griffith said calmly. Of course, you weren't lured. If the three of them were really companions from the other world, it seemed reasonable that Nasta wanted to plead with Asakes through Yulia. However, Griffith instinctively felt that there was something fishy going on. The otherworld hypothesis was too vague. He still couldn't believe it. Take me to him. Yulia took a deep breath and said, Let him tell you personally whether I'm lying or not. Don't worry. I will. Griffith said calmly, but not now. Wait until the people from the God-blessed church leave. Do you know why Nasta wants to see you? Because. Yulia opened her mouth subconsciously. Then she suddenly changed the topic. I think he want me to plead with Asakes for him. She tilted her head and let her hair hang down, covering half of her face. However, she seemed to be looking at something out of the corner of her eyes. Griffith caught Yulia's little movement clearly. He reached out his hand at lightning speed toward Yulia. A blood-curdling scream rang out. Yulia covered her bloody ear in shock and anger. At the same time, a blood-stained earring appeared in Griffith's hand. It was torn off from Yulia's ear. Give it back. Yulia threw herself at Griffith recklessly. However, she was no match for a vampire. You seem to be very nervous about this earring. Griffith, who easily subdued Yulia, chuckled. He reached out his hand again and pulled off the other earring of Yulia. You misunderstood me. It's just my instinct. Yulia panicked. It's not important. Then I'll break it, Griffith said directly. He put one of the earrings on the ground and lifted his leg. No, it's my mother's relic. I beg you. Yulia immediately begged. I can't lose it. Griffith had already stepped on it. But at this moment, Yulia directly stretched out her hand and covered the earring. This step directly stepped on her palm. Yulia screamed in pain. Griffith ignored her and lifted his leg again. Yulia said in panic, You can't break it. You can't break it. If you break it, I won't be able to return to my original world. I beg you. I'll do anything you want me to do. I beg you. You can suck my blood. I'll be your slave. Really? This is my only hope. What exactly is this? Griffith was still stepping on Yulia's palm. We found this in the historical remains when we were exploring. Yulia said with a pained expression, I took one. Norsta also took one, and Asakes had one. There are grooves for these gems on the door. This is the key to open the door. Norsta is looking for you because of your key? No. He wanted to steal Asash's key from him. Yulia said faintly, I don't know what happened to the two brothers in the past 10 years. I have a feeling that Norsta wanted to abandon Asakes and leave alone. However, he had no choice but to continue staying by Asash's side. Why? Because of the door. Yulia smiled bitterly and said, Norsta isn't a research genius, but Asakes is very good at it. Norsta told me that Asakes seemed to have found traces of the door after 10 years of research. Also, this door that can connect the two worlds seems to have been built from this world. Norsta still needs to rely on Asakes to find the location of the door, so he has to continue staying by his side. No wonder Rose Countess had been collecting ancient documents from all over the world all these years. It turns out, Griffith was moved. He thought to himself, the door was built here? Rose Countess's behavior had always been very strange. How could she trust Norsta? Norsta wasn't her embrace target. Norsta wasn't afraid at all. Norsta and Rose Countess both treated Yulia very differently. Could it be that there really was a door that could lead to another world? Moreover, it was a dream world where there was no war and people didn't have to fight for resources. A real dream world. Miss Yulia, I won't easily believe you, Griffith said calmly. Griffith said indifferently, unless I see it with my own eyes, otherwise, I will temporarily keep this pair of earrings for you. At this time, Griffith violently pried open Yulia's fingers that were grabbing onto the earrings. In the end, under her resentful gaze, he directly swallowed the pair of earrings into his mouth. Yulia's face instantly turned ashen. You don't have to despair. Griffith glanced at her and said calmly, if what you said is true, I will naturally return the earrings to you. Besides, if there really is such a dream world, I'm also very interested. Yulia seemed to have thought of something terrifying. Her voice trembled as she said, You want to what? Am I not welcome? Griffith smiled faintly. Yulia seemed to have gone crazy. No, I won't allow it. I won't let you go to my hometown. You are a vampire. Once you go there, it will be a disaster, an unprecedented disaster. Even if I die, I won't. Norsta and Rose Countess, aren't they vampires? Griffith sneered. Yulia was instantly rendered speechless. It was as if her soul had been sucked out of her body. She muttered to herself, the free and fair goddess of dawn. What have I done? Goddess of dawn? A religion from another world. Griffith's heart skipped a beat. He secretly remembered the name of this goddess. What's your relationship with Norsta? Griffith suddenly asked. Yulia said faintly, He's my adoptive father. Griffith nodded his head casually. Wait here. I will go out and check the situation. After saying that, Griffith left through the secret passageway in the mezzanine. He opened the door to the secret passageway and then closed it again. However, he did not leave immediately. Instead, he stood outside the wall and listened. A faint sobbing sound slowly entered Griffith's ears. Father, can we still go back to our hometown? Father, where are you? I am scared. I am really scared. I want to go back. Hometown, our home. The sobbing sound gradually calmed down. However, Griffith's heart was not calm. An alternate world like Utopia? He slowly sighed and instantly disappeared into the darkness of the secret passageway. Hashtag PS1. Same as before. PS2. The number of chapters in the previous chapter is wrong. How can I have 100 chapters? Sad face in a chapter. Chapter 2297. There is nothing wrong with Yulia's heartbeat. Griffith listened attentively to Yulia's heartbeat during the conversation. The other world that Yulia mentioned might exist, but Griffith's rationality still made him want to deny it. However, a utopian country, a country without vampires, where only normal humans like Yulia lived, an unrealistic desire seemed to be ignited without him noticing. Griffith was still very calm. It's a pity that the embrace consumes a lot of vitality, or else, if it weren't for the fact that the God blessed the church had occupied the castle and was in danger, it would be much easier to verify the authenticity of the information. Did Lady Isabel go down the deep pit? Yes, I heard that the traces of Rose Earl were found down there. Perhaps we can find that thing as well. What is Lady Isabel trying to find? I heard that it's the most important thing to the Holy See. It's related to whether we can win this war. The soldiers of the Holy See who passed by were talking about something. After they left, Griffith's figure slowly floated up. This was the special ability he got after becoming a vampire. He could distort light to deceive people's sight. He wasn't really invisible. She was curled up in the corner of the biological laboratory. She seemed to be physically and mentally exhausted. She seemed to be dreaming of something and was making soft, sleep-talking noises. "Father, where are you?" "Lady Nan, this is the first time I've heard you mention your father." Yulia suddenly opened her eyes and rubbed them hard. In the next second, she rushed over with tears and snot. "Boss!" She missed him. She didn't care. She sized up the black-haired young man in front of her. Her boss, the owner of the shop, the omnipotent boss. Boss, boss, boss. She really wanted to be like her boss. Really, especially at this time. She almost thought that she was dreaming, but her boss did appear in the page world of the Holy Land. "Boss, are you here to save me?" An expectant voice sounded. "Lady Nan." Luaccio did not answer the question directly. He only said softly, "Please give me your hand." Yulia. Nan Xiaonan reached out her hands without hesitation. Boss Luo also reached out his hand and covered her palm. The palm that had been trampled into a bloody mess by Griffith was instantly healed. But soon, another bloody mess appeared on the palm. "You won't be able to explain yourself if your hand suddenly recovers," Luaccio said slowly. "Thank you, boss." Lady Nan immediately narrowed her eyes. "Boss, you see, it's quite inconvenient for me to be here." "How about? Lady Nan is really an outstanding employee." Boss Luo smiled and said, "It's really an eye-opener for me to get through the crisis when you don't have the ability." "No, I was just trying my best." Hearing such praises directly from the boss's mouth, this which from the other world's academic faction suddenly felt a little embarrassed. "I believe that with Lady Nan's wisdom, even if you don't use your abilities, you'll be able to overcome all difficulties," Boss Luo said expectantly. "I'm looking forward to Lady Nan's next performance." "Boss, just give me the ability to turn into mist. If it doesn't work, I'll give it to some of my friends from Star Creation. Let's follow the rules here." Boss Luo smiled and said, "I believe in your ability." F*CKU. F*CK. Young Mistress Nan's mental state exploded. If she didn't scare Griffith just now, her boss would have already taken action. F*CK. She was somewhat emotional and said angrily, "Boss, it's so hard for me. Didn't you already get a lot of materials in the last world?" Boss Luo said calmly. Lady Nan was dazed. She did get a lot of materials, but the key was that when she was taken away by the vortex, she didn't have time to take away those materials. Lady Nan was about to cry blood in her heart. Boss Luo said, "I'll keep the materials for you for now. I'll return them to you when we go back. Treat them as this time's reward. Those materials are enough for your black soul body to evolve to a good stage." Lady Nan wanted to cry, but had no tears. But I fought so hard to get them back." "You picked them up." Boss Luo smiled casually and said, "I saw it." Lady Nan smiled embarrassedly. "So, in the last world, the boss was hiding in the dark and peeping?" Sure enough, the pages didn't appear in the last world. She had already guessed it. Holy Land page world, Pilot page world, the pages of the 2 consecutive page worlds were taken away by the boss himself. It seemed that the boss didn't intend to let others know the contents of the diaries in these 2 worlds. She subconsciously rubbed her bangs. "Boss, what should I do next?" Boss Luo thought for a while and said, "If I don't appear, what will you do?" F*CK. This kind of question again. Lady Nan wailed in her heart, but she still said her thoughts. "I'll try my best to gain Griffith's trust. I need to find Mr. Assakes through him. He's now a superior vampire, and should be much stronger than Griffith. As long as I return to his side, the crisis on me will basically be solved. But Griffith probably won't let you see ass aches, Boss Luo said casually. I know, Lady Nan nodded. So I made him believe in the existence of a key, and Asakes found the clue of the door. Sooner or later, Griffith won't be able to resist. He yearns for such an ideal country. Do you yearn for it? Boss Luo suddenly looked at her and asked softly, Lady Nan. Lady Nan opened her mouth and said unexpectedly, no one can refuse such an ideal country, right? There's indeed an ideal country in this world. What? Griffith, he will find this ideal place. Boss Luo smiled mysteriously at this time. Lady Nan rubbed her bangs more fiercely and asked tentatively, is it written like this on the pages? He's back, Boss Luo said slowly and looked at the entrance of the secret passage. Nan Xiaonan was dazed and looked over. When she turned around, Boss Luo was already gone. So difficult. Lady Nan sighed, subconsciously. Is the boss requirement for Black Soul so high? Then how did the Black Soul envoys before him pass the test? Could it be that each and every one of them was a genius? This Miss Demonis of the Otherworld's academic faction was indeed dealt a heavy blow at this moment. A rumbling sound came. It was the sound of the stone door of the secret passage beginning to move. Mistin took a deep breath, and 2 drops of tears flowed out directly. Saliva couldn't do it. Griffith could probably tell, so she had to cry for real. She felt it was too difficult for her, so she really cried. Griffith came back with some food and water. Yulia ate it wholeheartedly. While eating, she stared at Griffith's every move with vigilance. Tell me about your hometown, Griffith said indifferently. I lied to you. There's no such thing as a different world. Yulia said quickly. I'll tell you the truth. I can't make it up. You're very fickle. Griffith smiled faintly. Maybe you're lying. It's hard to tell the truth from the lies. Yulia remained silent for a while and then asked tentatively, If you find out that I'm lying to you, what will you do? You should be able to give me a full meal, Griffith said casually. As long as the people of the Holy Church don't leave and take you with them, I'll be in more danger. Yulia's face turned gloomy. Can you help me find Father Norsta? I didn't know it was him who asked you to lead me to the dungeon. If I knew this, I would have gone in. Since you can help him lead me to the dungeon, your relationship with him should be... Let's talk about it later. Griffith said expressionlessly. There are people of the Holy Church outside. If you act rashly, you'll only bring danger to yourself. That's the only way. Yulia sighed. At this moment, Griffith moved again and went out to inquire about the situation. Yulia could use this time to escape from the biology lab. She realized that Griffith didn't lock the secret tunnel this time. However, since her boss gave her a hint, her boss seemed to be implying that she could stay beside Griffith. I should run away. He didn't lock the secret tunnel on purpose so that she could escape. I'm now Yulia from another world. She got into character within a second. The airship above the city of God's protection suddenly released a small transport ship. It slowly landed on the lawn where God Bless Church used to be. At the same time, a group of warriors from the Holy Church rushed over. The hatch of the transport ship opened, and a group of warriors wearing black armor and helmets slowly walked out. Their black armor was different from the black armor of the vampires. Their black armor was bigger, and the carvings were more ferocious. They looked like evil spirits. Which unit are you from? How come I've never seen you before? The leader of the small group of warriors looked at the warriors in black armor in confusion. He didn't receive any reports about this unit. They walked out of the airship. Just as all the warriors in black armor walked out, an old man in a wheelchair appeared at the entrance of the cabin. The leader of the small group of warriors was shocked when he saw the old man's face. He knelt down without thinking and said, "Why did you?" The old man in the wheelchair didn't say anything, and a warrior in black armor pushed him forward. The leader of the small group of warriors and the rest of the warriors from the Holy Church were gasping for breath. When the warrior in black armor who pushed the old man passed by them, he said calmly, "Continue with your original mission." "Yes, yes, sir." The leader of the small group of warriors didn't dare to hesitate. This old man on the wheelchair was only after the old man and the group of warriors in black armor had all entered the castle did the members of this small group of warriors dare to stand up. They looked at the leader of their own small group. The leader of the small group of warriors could only smile bitterly and say, "Don't look at me. You heard what I said just now. Just mind your own business. We don't know anything else." I didn't expect the Pope to come in person. A member of the small group couldn't help but say in fear, "I wonder if Lady Isabel knows about this." If Lady Isabel didn't know about what happened to the Pope in the airship, then this matter was far beyond what they could bear. "Master, I can walk on my own, Marianne. You're finally awake." In the long passage, Essex didn't put down Marianne, who had just woken up. "How's your wound? Still not healing?" "It's healing, but it's very slow." The maid Marianne shook her head. "I'm sorry to let you see me like this." "You saved me, Marianne." Mr. Essex said seriously, "You've done very well. Don't blame yourself." Alan, who was scouting ahead, said at this time, "We're already very deep underground. This passage actually hasn't reached the end. It should be soon." Mr. Essex thought for a while and said, "I smell something bad." "What's that smell?" Kate or Lily asked nervously. "The smell of fire." Mr. Essex frowned. "There's even a strong heat source in front." Not long after, they left the passage. In front of them was a suspension bridge made of iron chains. Under the suspension bridge, magma was flowing slowly. At the end of the suspension bridge, they saw a trapezoidal pyramid, like an island, standing alone in the magma pool. "It seems that we've reached our destination." Mr. Allen was shocked by the scene in front of him and sighed. "I didn't expect such a majestic building to be hidden deep underground." At this time, Mr. Essex put down Marianne. "I'll go ahead and have a look." After saying that, Mr. Arthas directly jumped into the suspension bridge and then slowly walked towards the pyramid. The blazing aura completely distorted his back. At this moment, two huge fire pillars directly rushed out of the magma pool. With the appearance of the fire pillars, two flames suddenly emerged from the magma pool and stood up. The two flame giants were like the guards of the pyramid. They instantly swung their palms at Arthas, who was on the suspension bridge. Mr. Assash's face changed slightly, and he didn't move forward but retreated directly back to the starting point. The two flame giants didn't chase after him, but just stood quietly at the end of the suspension bridge. "It seems that if we want to go in, we can only fight these two big guys." Mr. Essex couldn't help but frown. "What kind of monsters are they?" Alan was scared and nervous at this time. "I've never heard of them. At present, there are a total of 796 kinds of monsters on the ground." Mr. Essex quickly said at this time, "But these two flame giants are not among the 796 kinds of monsters. And, so far, no monsters that can survive in the magma have been found. When these two flame giants attacked me just now, I could feel that they are not living creatures." "Not living creatures? Then what is it?" "It's like a special power," Mr. Essex muttered. "Flame giants are more like the creatures in the illusion. Maybe they're actually created by all essence." "Are you sure?" Mr. Allen asked eagerly, even forgetting to use honorifics. Mr. Essex pointed to the top of the pyramid. "See, the mark on the pyramid, the mark of the top secret file of the God-blessed church." Mr. Allen was silent for a long time, and then suddenly said, "In fact, there was such a mark on the box I got from the dying tramp." "So, Sir Count, your guess may be right. Here, if there is no all essence, there must be a close relationship with all essence." Suddenly, Mr. Essex grabbed the back of Alan's collar and lifted him directly. "What are you doing?" Alan was shocked. "Don't be nervous. It's just an experiment." Mr. Essex chuckled and said, "You have the residual power of all essence. If these two flames are also created by all essence, that is to say, the power between you is of the same origin, they may not attack you." "This is unfounded," Alan suddenly exclaimed. "You can't do this." However, he had already been thrown out by Arthas, and that was not all. Arthas jumped up and stood on top of Alan, who was thrown out and rushed over with his imperial kinesis skill. ######PS 211s. Chapter 2298. The Imperial Sword. No, the Imperial Person technique was successfully activated. Mr. Asash's speed +3 directly colliding with the two flame giants. Alan was so desperate that he forgot to scream. He helplessly watched the two flame giants grow bigger and bigger in front of his eyes. He was about to crash into one of the flame giants. However, at this time, the result that Mr. Asakes had guessed did not appear. The two flame giants twisted their bodies again, waved their palms, and lined up Mr. Asakes and Alan, who were as small as flies. At this moment, Mr. Asakes suddenly exerted force and directly stepped on Alan, while his body was forcibly raised again in a way that even the coffin lid of gravity could not hold down. Alan fell onto the metal suspension bridge in an instant, but because of inertia, he continued to slide forward. Asakes passed through the hands of the two flame giants and then landed on the sliding Alan again. Mr. Allen let out a miserable cry at this time. They had stopped in the middle of the suspension bridge. Of course, it was not caused by some kind of gland breaking in front. It was because the bridge was extremely hot. At this time, Alan was sliding close to the bridge, his whole body on fire. He rolled on the bridge crazily in order to extinguish the red flames on his clothes. However, Mr. Asakes suddenly jumped up again at this time. He actually took advantage of this gap and jumped to the back of one of the flame giant's neck. Mr. Asakes punched the back of the flame giant's neck. His entire arm was covered with a demonic red light, and it actually sank into the back of the flame giant's neck. With a deep shout, Mr. Asakes struggled to pull his arm out of the back of the flame giant's neck. At the same time, the flame giant's body actually dissolved in an instant, directly melting into the magma pool below, causing the magma pool to set off billowing waves. When there was only one flame giant left, Mr. Asakes did the same again and easily dissolved the second flame giant. He fell onto the suspension bridge. At this time, Alan had already extinguished the flames on his body. He was dirty and looked at the cold and ruthless Rose Countess in front of him in shock and anger. Have you seen these things before? Mr. Asakes directly opened his palm. In the center of his palm, there were two irregular crystals shining brightly. No, I haven't. Alan shook his head. It seems that this is the so-called 10,000 element. Asakes said indifferently, it is the thing that erodes your body. Mr. Allen couldn't help but be terrified. He immediately put away his dissatisfied thoughts and muttered, how do you know that their weakness is at the back of their neck? Observe, perceive, and guess. However, this Rose Countess gave an extremely mysterious answer. Mr. Allen frowned and said nothing. Perception. Could it be that Rose Countess, as a vampire, had an especially powerful perception ability? According to him, unlike the half-finished black armored warriors in the castle, real vampires had all kinds of strange abilities, also known as talents. Unexpectedly, the flames did not appear again. The two of them waited on the bridge for a moment before Arthashis signaled for Kalili and Marion, who were at the bridgehead, to come over. After some time, they finally succeeded in crossing the suspension bridge. However, at this time, Asakes threw one of the two crystals in his hand into the magma pool. Boss, you are. Kate or Lily looked at him in astonishment. Doing an experiment. Asakes chuckled and said, in addition, maybe I can leave some gifts for the people who come later. He silently observed the changes after the crystal was thrown into the magma pool. He saw that after the crystal was thrown into the magma pool, a huge whirlpool quickly appeared in the magma pool. And in this whirlpool of magma, a giant arm instantly stretched out. Come, let's go in. Mr. Asakes seemed to have seen what he wanted to see. He reached out his hand to protect Kay or Lily and retreated. It was a pyramid standing in the middle of the magma pool. Griffith said that the secret passage in this mezzanine only led to a few fixed places. One of the places was blocked, and the only way left was to the library and the Pope's Hall. She decided to go to the library. Maybe she could find something in the library. Well, she did not know which path led to the library. She just took a random path. Even if she was exposed and met the warriors of the Holy See, she was at least a human. Wouldn't it be safer to fall into the hands of the warriors of the Holy See than to fall into the hands of Griffith? At this time, she had already arrived in front of a wall with a mechanism. According to the method that she secretly memorized Griffith's method of opening the mechanism, Yulia successfully made the wall move. Her whole body tensed up, ready to face any situation that could happen at any time. However, no danger appeared until the wall turned 90 degrees. Yulia leaned out. In front of her, there was no library. It was clearly an empty secret room, and at the stone platform in the middle of the secret room, there was a figure sitting there, looking straight at her. "Say, senior? Hi, newcomer." In the secret room, they confirmed that it was the right person. Yulia shuddered. She quickly closed the mechanism on the wall and walked to Madanzo's side. She saw that Madanzo's expression was not as relaxed as when she greeted her. Seeing that it was really Yulia, Madanzo slowly opened her mouth and said, "I'm here because..." At this time, Yulia blinked her eyes and hinted at something. Then, she directly said, "Why are you here? Didn't I ask you to hide? What if you were discovered?" Madanzo could not help but open her mouth. "What is this girl doing?" "That thing, did you get it?" Yulia quickly asked again. Madanzo could not help but blink. Under Yulia's nervous gaze, she slowly said, "I haven't found the thing yet. I've been hiding quietly. When I found this place, I didn't expect there to be nothing here. It seems like that guy is more secretive than we thought." Seeing Yulia's expression relax, Madanzo knew that she had succeeded in answering this question. That bastard Arthaces has always been extremely cunning. Yulia nodded. It's impossible for us to find the key in his hands so easily. Although he knew that Yulia might be worried about something and was weaving something, Eleven was still a bit confused. Yulia quickly said, "I was exposed. I was caught by a guy called Griffith. He already knows my identity. But don't worry, I won't tell anyone that you are with us. There were actually 4 people who came to this alien world because of the relics." "Who is Griffith? Relics? Alien world? Who am I? Where am I? What am I listening to?" "You actually said it out loud." Madanzo suddenly jumped up and excitedly grabbed Yulia's arms. "How could you do this? Have you forgotten what we talked about before?" Yulia continued blinking and hinting crazily as if to say, You've passed. I had no choice. The guy was too careful." Yulia sighed. "If I didn't tell you the secret, I'm afraid that I would be a corpse now." "Then you escaped?" Madanzo thought for a moment and said. Yulia quickly nodded. "Yes. Let's talk while walking. Is it safe here?" Madanzo said, "This is a secret room in the library, but it has been discovered by the people of the Holy Church. Later, a group of guys wearing black armor and an old man in a wheelchair came here. They seemed to be transporting something out of here. I was afraid that I would be exposed, so I didn't take a good look. After the old man left, he also called the people who were guarding here away, so there shouldn't be anyone outside." "Really?" Yulia nodded. "Let's go. We need to think of a plan. My key was stolen by Griffith, so we must think of a way to get it back from him." "Come with me," Madanzo replied. The two of them quickly left the secret room. Not long after, the walls slowly moved and a black figure slowly emerged from the darkness. He walked into the secret room with a serious expression and looked in the direction that Madanzo and Yulia left. The otherworldly incident. It's actually true. That thing, could it be the key in Rose Countess' hand? Yulia didn't tell the truth completely. There's a 4th otherworlder. Could it be that it wasn't Norsta's intention to steal the key from Rose Countess? This Yulia wanted to steal the key herself? Not only Rose Countess, maybe she also wanted to steal Norsta's key secretly. She probably didn't want them, who had become vampires, to return to their homeland. Everything can be explained. There was indeed no one in the library, but there was still a warrior of the Holy See standing guard outside the library. Madanzo secretly tore a piece of paper from the desk and quickly wrote a few words, stuffing it into Yulia's hand. It was only a short line. The male lead was taken away by the old man. Madanzo said with a serious expression, I heard that Rose Countess isn't dead yet. In the depths of the hall, a deep pit was exposed due to the attack of the giant cannon. There are also traces of man-made excavation. Yulia said, the key is very important. Essex wants to go home even in his dreams. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spent so much effort investigating all these years. 15 years. Look at this room full of information. He probably wouldn't hide the key. He would always carry such an important thing with him. Madanzo thought for a moment and smiled bitterly. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do. Vampires are too dangerous for us. As for those soldiers from the Vatican, they're fully armed. This is hell level. Let's not talk about the distant ones. There's also a person guarding outside. Even getting out is a problem. Maybe we can make use of Griffith. Yulia thought for a moment and said, he doesn't know about your existence. In my opinion, he probably wants to get his hands on the key. I can pretend to obey him and gain his trust. This method is too dangerous. Madanzo shook her head. Yulia grabbed her hair and swept the things on the table to the ground in frustration. Then tell me, what else can we do? If my key wasn't taken away by him, we still have a chance. But now, tell me, calm down. Madanzo hugged her quickly. Calm down. You have to stay calm at this time. How can I calm down? Yulia burst into tears and fell to the ground. She covered her face and said, I just want to go home. I don't want to stay in this damned place anymore. Why do we come out to take risks? Why do we enter the ruins? Why? Are you feeling better? Metatro patted her shoulder lightly. How long have you escaped? Could it be that the person who captured you has discovered that you escaped? He went to find out the situation. Yulia sobbed and said, he shouldn't be back so soon. Wait, we should destroy the mechanism in the secret tunnel first. Let's go. Madanzo nodded. At this moment, the light seemed to distort, and a slender figure slowly appeared in front of the two of them. It was an incomparably handsome face. The newcomer chuckled and said, don't bother. Gee, Griffith. Yulia's face instantly turned pale as she widened her eyes in disbelief. Her eyes were filled with fear and despair. How did you? Madanzo suddenly picked up a pen and stabbed it toward Griffith. But Griffith waved his hand and sent Metatro flying. Metatro crashed into a bookshelf, and the bookshelf fell to the ground. Who's there, Dash? At the same time, the soldier of the Holy Church who was guarding the door heard the noise and broke into the room. A murderous spirit flashed in Griffith's eyes. He dropped the sword at his waist and pierced the throat of the guard, nailing him to the door. Life extinguisher. Now, no one is guarding here. Griffith walked up to Yulia with a faint smile on his face and squatted down in front of her. So, he reached out and lifted the chin of Yulia, who was in a panic. Squinting his eyes, he said, Ms. Yulia, what are you going to do with me? Yulia opened her mouth subconsciously as if she was scared silly. Ms. Isabel, we found a lava pool in the front, and a huge tower-shaped building can be seen in the center. At the end of the tunnel, waves of heat surged. With a frown, Isabel pushed aside the subordinate who was reporting to her and walked out of the tunnel. Then she saw a huge pyramid at the end of the suspension bridge with red light shining in front of her. Found it. Looking at the mark on the pyramid, Isabel couldn't help but smile. What's that, Dash? At this moment, a huge figure suddenly stood up from the churning magma pool. What's this? It was a cliff. They walked out of a cave behind the cliff. They were supposed to enter a trapezoidal pyramid. However, what appeared in front of them was blue sky, white clouds, and a vast and boundless land. Fertile land. Is this an illusion? Mr. Essex couldn't help but frown. However, the wind was so real and refreshing. Hashtag PS1. 520 PS2. Same as before. End of this chapter.